Jason Ridley. Is anybody sitting next to you? Mr. Leaders, there's a seat, one seat down here. If somebody'd like to sit here. Chairman Meeks. I feel like a Baptist preacher. If there's a seat next to you, slide over so somebody can get. Chairman Tillery, I've never seen this room this full.
Well, I was almost called you Senator Hatchett. They all come for you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know about that. Good morning. I think we need to try that again. Good morning. Hey, everybody's awake. All right. Well, thank y'all for being here. The Lord blessed us. He brought snow this weekend. He's going to bring snow coming up. So he fit us in the middle. So thank you. With that, I would like to invite Chairman Gerald Green, Dean Green, on his birthday and his 44th Joint Appropriations hearing to open us in prayer. Dean Green.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, our great Appropriations Chair. Let us pray. Almighty God, as we come before you today, we come with humble hearts and grateful spirits as we gather in this place of public service. We thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of the great state of Georgia and for the trust they have placed in us. And as we begin these appropriation meetings, we ask for your wisdom, your guidance, and your discernment. Grant us clarity of mind and purity of purpose as we consider the resources entrusted to our care. Help us to listen carefully, deliberate thoughtfully, and act responsible, always mindful that every decision we make affects the lives of our citizens. Bless our governor, the members of the Georgia General Assembly, and all who serve in leadership capacities in our state. Grant them courage, integrity, and spirit of cooperation, and may our discussions be marked by mutual respect, civility, and a shared commitment to the common good. Guide us to the wise stewards of the public trust, to act with fairness and compassion, and to seek solutions that strengthen our communities, protect the vulnerable, and promote opportunity for all. We ask your blessings upon the state of Georgia, upon its people, and upon the work we begin here today. May our actions honor you and serve the best interests of those we represent. And we ask all of this in the name of our Lord and Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Dean Green. All right, we got a full house, so keep it to a low rumble, please. Well, as you know, last year we didn't get to have these because of Mother Nature, but luckily we are this year. It's going to be a long 3 days. They're packed. There may be times when we don't allow you to ask your question because we need to move on, and I'll go ahead and apologize for that in advance. But we got a lot to hear from a lot of people, a lot of very important people the next 3 days. Senator Tillery, want to add anything?
No. Well, first of all, welcome again to the joint hearings. As Chairman Hatchett said, last year we did miss these because of snow. Those of you who aren't involved in the leadership of appropriations may not know this. We alternate years. The House plans one year, the Senate plans the subsequent year. And this year the House planned the meetings. Thank you, Chairman Hatchett, Christine, Dave, for the work y'all have already put into this. Also remember, though, that this is not, for those watching online, this is not the only budget hearing that takes place. Budget hearings will continue throughout the entire session until we finally end on April 2nd. We will be negotiating the budget, negotiating with agencies all the way to the end. So please don't think we're spending $40 billion of your state taxpayer dollars with just a 5-minute conversation. That is absolutely not the case. Committee hearings will happen afterwards. The House will break up into their own committees. The Senate will do their own. This is not just a 5-minute decision made. I'm honored. This is my 7th year sitting here chairing the budget. It is hard to believe that 7 years have gone by that fast. We are in a much different position than we were the first time I was chairing the budget. That was the middle of COVID, 2020, when we were taking 15% out. But the one thing that has not changed is that every single dollar we spend comes from somebody in our state's pocket. And I want us to keep that at the forefront when you're going to hear a lot of good ideas on how money should be spent. But remember that you have to take it out of a taxpayer's pocket to spend it in the first place. So I hope we'll keep that at the forefront when we're going through these things over the next few days. Chairman Hatchett, thanks again for the preparation you've done to get us here.
Thank you, Chairman Tillery. President Pro Tem Walker, if I was a senator, I'd be getting up and letting them have your seat. Let you have their seat. I mean, I'm just trying to prompt one of these good senators. Thank you for being here. I tried. Well, we are awaiting our special guest. So,
President Pro, there is a chair on the left side over here if you want to. You have to sit by Representative Donahue, but there is one over here on the left. Yes, sir.
Colleagues, it's my honor today to introduce someone to you that really needs no introduction, but it's my first time to introduce him to the joint appropriations hearing in person and not from Davos. Ladies and gentlemen, the 83rd Governor of the state of Georgia, the Honorable Brian Kemp. Governor, the floor is yours. I believe your mic is ready to go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chairman Hatchett. I appreciate the kind words, Chairman Tillery, members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee. I am honored to be here with you in person this year to present my final 2 budget recommendations. I also just want to take a moment as we start and thank you for allowing me to address you virtually in previous years while Marty and I have been on economic development trips to bring more jobs and investment to our state. As you know, last year we were in Germany at this time and met with some great leaders from companies that you all know, all of whom either already operate in Georgia or looking at potential investments. That includes Maersk, who's one of our largest clients at our port, largest shipping company in the world in terms of a market presence. And as we continue to grow and reach capacity at the Georgia Ports Authority, conversations like that mean greater business and job growth for our state. In fact, port activity now supports over 650,000 full and part-time jobs across the Peach State, a 7% jump over just the last fiscal year, which is pretty incredible. In 2024, Chairman Hatchett mentioned that we were in Davos, and I remember that trip well, the first one especially because people were giving me a hard time for going over there, especially some of my friends on our side of the aisle, and now we know President Trump's going over there. I doubt they're going to give him as hard a time as they did me. But we did have a great trip. In 2024, we met with GF Casting, which then announced a few months later a project in Augusta promising 350 new jobs and $184 million in investment. The prior year, in our first trip to Davos, we met with executives from Hyundai, LG, SK Group, and others. And I don't have to tell you how big an impact their various expansions and announcements have had on our state and our hardworking people. Those trips had real impact on the communities and the people that we serve, just like the budgets that you work on and pass. So again, I just really want to thank you all for your partnership over the years and for sharing a strong commitment to responsible, strategic, and measured approaches to the annual budget, and also just thank you for indulging me and letting present virtually. It was worthwhile, all those trips were, but I am glad to be here in person with you all this morning. These annual budgets requires discipline and respect for the people that sent us here, because every dollar we allocate is a dollar they earned, not the government. As I said in my final State of the State address last week, refusing to grow government, budgeting conservatively, and paying off debt aren't flashy, but they are the right thing to do by our constituents. Georgia voters have again and again rewarded those who hold spending in check by returning them to the Gold Dome. So it is not only right to be conservative in our approach, it's not only the best thing for our state and its fiscal standing, it's also, quite honestly, just good politics. And the results, I think, speak for themselves. Our approach has maintained Georgia's AAA credit rating, saving taxpayers and future generations millions of dollars in interest. On top of this, it has allowed us to use cash to finance projects throughout the state instead of debt, saving taxpayers and future appropriators who will sit in your seats $3.3 billion in interest payments over the next 20 years. It has allowed us to store up strategic reserves for the next economic downturn, ensuring you all or future legislators won't be forced to cut critical services for Georgians when, not if, the next economic crisis hits. And it's enabled us to put more toward education, health care, and mental health resources than ever before in our state's history. We've also been able to make historic investments in infrastructure across Georgia, again, because of our strategic and restrained budget approach. That careful planning has allowed us to return money and reduce the tax burden on Georgians at a time when prices skyrocketed to 40-year highs. All told, we've now saved them $9.7 billion through tax rebates, reductions, suspensions of the gas tax, and other measures, and that is with you all's help. And again, with your help, we'll increase that amount even more. All of these historic measures did not happen by chance, they happened by choice. We choose to live within our means, resist pressure to grow government, and use one-time funds for generational projects through a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity our revenue level gave us. Policies that grow the economy instead of government are also why we've seen sustained job creation, private investment, and rising wages in Georgia. This year, I'm asking you to double down on that winning approach yet again, further accelerating the largest income tax cut in our state's history by 20 basis points. With this third acceleration, we will deliver on the promise we made in 2022 to bring the tax rate under 5%, and we'll do it 3 full years ahead of schedule. As you all know, this will save hardworking Georgians another $770 million every year. And I again want to thank you all for your work in the past and ask for your partnership again this year in record time as valued partners that you are. I'm also asking for your support in returning a fourth one-time tax rebate to families as they continue to face affordability challenges and the lingering high prices that came with 40-year high inflation. This will give a little over $1 billion back to hardworking Georgians for groceries, help with the rent or car payment, the ability to pay a little more on a credit card, or help with other needs. With these latest measures added to those from years prior, your hard work will now have given a total of $7.5 billion in targeted one-time relief to the people of our state and over $3.8 billion in permanent tax relief. These tax measures are not in conflict with fiscal discipline. They're a product of it. That's a pretty good record for any legislator or governor, if you ask me. With that same disciplined approach, the budgets before you continue to prioritize investments that strengthen Georgia's economic foundation. We are focused on building and maintaining the infrastructure necessary to support continued growth in both transportation and workforce development. Georgia's roads, bridges, ports, rail connections, and airports are not just assets, they are economic tools. When they function efficiently, they reduce costs for both drivers and employers, shorten commutes, and improve the quality of life for families in our state. But to meet current demands and prepare for future growth, we need to make strategic investments in that system. Therefore, my amended budget includes more than $2.3 billion to further expand and improve critical freight and commuter corridors, provide additional support for local government for road maintenance, and address critical bridge repairs across the state. These investments bring the total additional transportation investment during my administration to more than $4.7 billion. That not only benefits commuters and businesses, it also keeps Georgians around the state working. The only reason we're able to make such transformational investments is because of the unique position that we're in with our reserves. That has allowed us to fund major projects with one-time surplus funds rather than long-term debt. Not only does that give us flexibility in out-year budgets, it also ensures today's infrastructure improvements do not become tomorrow's financial burden. In addition to transportation, these budgets continue targeted investments in water, sewer, and energy infrastructure to support growing communities across the state and attracting new employers. These budgets include $33 million for the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority's water and sewer funding program for local governments, as well as $35 million to establish a new natural gas infrastructure financing program. This is a first of the kind in Georgia. This program will help communities build infrastructure needed to support and expand key industries, including our critical timber sector. We all know how devastating Hurricane Helene was to this industry, and now that damage was amplified by the closure of multiple paper mills in southeast and southwest Georgia. That's why this past year I convened a forestry task force to bring together state agencies, academic institutions, and industry leaders to help us tackle this issue. My budgets fund items recommended by this task force so that we can further support this major industry in our state as it continues to recover. We will invest $660,000 into the Georgia Grown Wood program that the General Assembly supported last year. This will support economic development and media campaigns to market Georgia as a premier destination for forest product manufacturing. This budget also includes $2.6 million to construct a mass timber county unit facility for the Georgia Forestry Commission in Morgan County. We have seen the private sector begin to embrace mass timber construction, even here in Atlanta, and this will be a first-of-its-kind construction for a state agency. I can't think of a better agency to lead the way than the Forestry Commission, which serves and protects our forest lands every day. Just since the last time I presented budget recommendations to you, the great team at the Georgia Forestry Commission has fought or helped contain over 4,000 wildfires. That is a 64% increase over the 5-year average. And yet, of the 37.7 million acres in our state, those fires just burned 26,000 acres. That's a testimony to how dedicated the men and women who work for the Forestry Commission are, and I want to commend them for all the yeoman's work they've done during this current fire season. That success is also a testament to your impact through previous budgets. We knew following the devastation from Hurricane Helene, with the unprecedented amounts of timber now on the ground, this fire season would be difficult. That's why you helped us prepare by putting over $1.7 million toward replacing forestry vehicles and firefighting equipment in the FY 2026 budget, and over $4.7 million in the amended 25 budget for a new fire suppression helicopter. Given how effective the Forestry Commission has been, you can see just how impressive the return on the investment has also been. And I want to again thank you all for your partnership in securing those funds for the Forestry Commission. Finally, my budget includes nearly $11 million to establish the Georgia Forestry Innovation Initiative, building on the research underway through the REWOOD program at Georgia Tech's Renewable Byproducts Institute. These funds will be used to engineer, design, and test new technologies to support the expansion of our timber industry partners into new markets like automotive and pharmaceutical manufacturing. This partnership will be a textbook example of how the research in our USG laboratories is directly supporting Georgia businesses. I'm also proud to report that demand for higher education opportunities in Georgia is higher than ever. That's why my fiscal year 2027 budget includes more than $253 million to meet enrollment growth both across our university and technical college systems. But we also know too many students either don't attend or fail to complete college because they can't afford it, while others finish with debt that weighs them down literally for decades. The fiscal year 2027 budget includes an additional $58 million to fully fund Hope scholarships and grants at the 100% factor rate we return the program to, again, with you all's help. You'll be glad to know that because of that good work, last year Hope programs helped nearly 250,000 students attend post-secondary institutions. I also want to thank you again for your partnership in eliminating the special institution fee for students in 2022. Further reducing the cost of higher education in our state and keeping college within reach for hardworking families. Last week, as you remember, I announced yet another and perhaps more historic measure we will work on together to make college more affordable and accessible to Georgia students. My amended budget includes a $325 million endowment to expand the DREAM Scholarship, the first needs-based aid program of its kind in Georgia history. This investment has a goal of leveraging an additional $1.2 billion in private funding to create, in the coming years, a permanent, sustainable source of need-based aid for thousands of future Georgia students. This structure matters a great deal when it comes to our budgets, because using one-time funds for an endowment rather than creating a recurring obligation, expands access while also maintaining long-term stability. The return on that investment will be higher college completion rates, a more skilled workforce, and reduced student debt, which will benefit the entire state's economy. With your help over the years, we have also invested $100 million in capital maintenance projects, so our higher ed schools are worthy of the students that attend them. The amended budget provides another $88 million for MRR needs across our USG and TCSG campuses. These investments help meet outstanding infrastructure needs without having to raise tuition. We're also giving an additional $3 million to the technical college system for a new college and career academy. This year, we're also focusing on connecting graduating students with job creators, because without a good job, there's not much return on even a quality education. That is why my budget invests $14 million in a cutting-edge career navigator application that will help students and job creators find available positions and provide a clear pathway for economic mobility. Just like the cost-cutting measures and tax rate reductions we pass, the investments we made in education, workforce, and economic development will help hardworking Georgians with affordability. Because the best way to fight through high prices is to have a good job with good wages and good benefits. These are investments that will pay dividends not just for years, but I believe for generations. As we continue to build on Georgia's fiscal and workforce infrastructure, we're also protecting the foundations of our financial stability. Together, we have invested more than $4.1 billion in the last 3 fiscal years in capital construction and maintenance needs by using surplus funds rather than new debt. As I said earlier, that decision will save future generations billions in interest payments while also saving them on deferred maintenance costs. As a result, our debt ratio is the lowest it's been since we first began issuing bonds over a half a century ago. In addition to this historic accomplishment, you've also helped us eliminate the outstanding unfunded liability for state retiree health benefits, reducing it from over $2.1 billion to zero. Thanks to those efforts, we will save more than $240 million annually in health costs beginning this upcoming fiscal year. We're using those savings to invest an additional $200 million into the teacher state health benefit plan to keep them on solid financial footing. Even while making these unprecedented investments, we have kept our rainy day fund full and preserved undesignated reserves so we can properly respond to whatever unknown challenges the future brings. I'll close by reiterating what we have all accomplished and more was done by choice, not by chance. As I pass this recommendations on to you, I'm confident that we can continue to build on this great partnership that has served our state and its people so well. Also, would be remiss if I didn't mention the greatest First Lady in the country is with us this morning, Marty Kemp. It has been an honor for us to serve this great state, and it's also been an honor to serve with you all. And I know that the work of your committees affects every agency, every community, and every family in our state. Like Georgia families budgeting around their kitchen tables, we have to plan based on what we actually earn today, not what we hope to earn tomorrow. Together, we'll continue the good work we began years ago, lowering the tax burden on hardworking Georgians, strategically investing in our state's future, and keeping Georgia the best state to live, work, and raise a family. I wish you all your best in your work. We look forward to working with you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and budget hearings. Thank you. God bless you.
Governor, thank you, and First Lady Marty Kemp for the service you've given this state for the past 7 years and a little while longer. You're not done yet, but it does not go lost on me that you wore that green tie today. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess we get down to business now. Thank you. And first up is Dr. Robert Bushman, our state economist. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for all of y'all being here. Packed room. Wow. As you heard, I'm Bob Bushman, state economist, here to talk to you today about Georgia's economic and revenue outlook. Thank you, Chairman Hatchett and Chairman Tillery, for inviting me to speak today. It's good to be back after getting sort of snowed out last year. I didn't see any snow, but I think some people up in North Georgia might have. My presentation today will follow this rough outline, hopefully with time for Q&A at the end. First, a state revenue update and a review of structural and economic contributors to recent revenue trends. Second, a review of U.S. and Georgia macroeconomic performance measures. Third, the outlook and the risks. And finally, a look at the revenue forecast. I'll start with a recap of fiscal 2025 performance compared to 24, as well as year-to-date fiscal 26 results. As you can see, fiscal 25 personal income tax collections grew by 1.3% despite tax rate cuts from a top rate of 5.75 in the first half of fiscal 24 to 5.19 flat rate effective the second half for the full second half of fiscal 25. For the first half of the current fiscal year, personal income tax collections are up 2.6%, even though tax rates are 3.7% lower than a year earlier. Corporate income taxes were down 9.9% in fiscal 25 and 4.4% year-to-date this year, somewhat larger declines than can be explained solely by rate cuts. Sales tax gains have slowed, in part due to declining inflation, while gains in motor fuels in fiscal 25 and year-to-date this year are mostly explained by the shorter suspension of motor fuels taxes in fiscal 25 than the year before, and no suspensions so far this year. Without the suspensions, the gains would have been marginal, 1% or less. People are just burning less gas. One item that stands out in the year-to-date numbers is the 93% gain in insurance premium taxes. Most of the reported gain is the result of an extraordinary refund paid in September 2024. So adjusting for that, however, you'd still see a 15% gain year-to-date in insurance premium taxes and a 14% gain in fiscal 2025. Stronger insurance premium tax revenue growth is due in large part to high inflation in insurance premiums, particularly in fiscal 2025. Total taxes in the year-to-date comparison are up 3.3%, an improvement over fiscal 2025 growth, but total general funds revenues grew more slowly, only 1.6%, mostly due to 28% lower interest earnings as interest rates came down and about $2 billion of undesignated surplus balances were drawn down for one-time items. For a quick review of longer-term revenue trends, this graph shows tax revenues by major tax types since fiscal 2020, starting at the base with personal and corporate income taxes, followed by sales, motor fuels, TABT, et cetera. Over 5 years, state revenues have grown cumulatively by $9 billion, or about 36%. But it's important to note that 94% of that growth, about $8.4 billion, came in just 2 years, fiscal 2021 and 22. The state's three largest revenue sources, personal and corporate income taxes and sales taxes, grew by $8.1 billion over the 5 years, accounting for 90% of total growth. Other taxes performances varied, especially the motor fuels tax, given the suspensions over the last 4 years. And as the figure makes clear, total tax revenues have been essentially flat since 2022, in spite of motor fuel tax suspensions and substantial income tax cuts, the first of which took effect starting in the second half of fiscal '24, and the second a year later. Taking a closer look at the main driver of income tax performance, this graph shows what's been happening with Georgia and U.S. personal income since the first quarter of 2020, just before pandemic job losses hit wage income. These data are seasonally adjusted for inflation and indexed to 100 in the first period, so you can see cumulative growth over time. First, the solid lines show total personal income, including from employment, from dividends, interest and rents, and from transfer payments. Georgia in orange and the nation in blue. The dotted lines show only the wage and salary component of total personal income. Those are the lines you should focus on, wage and salary income. National wage and salary income is up 8.6% cumulatively over the entire period, while Georgia is up 12%. With most of the outperformance coming in calendar year 2022. Growth continued through the first half of calendar year 25, the latest state data available, but Georgia underperformed slightly on wage and salary income over the last 4 quarters, though it did beat U.S. growth in total personal income 3.1% to 2.6%. Wage and salary income is really the main driver of personal income tax revenue growth over the medium to longer term. So let's take a deeper dive into that, our biggest revenue source. This graph shows both withholding and total net collections on an annual basis since 2015. Taxes on wage and salary income are collected generally through withholding. And historically, withholding collections have been approximately equal to total income tax collections on average each year. That changed starting in fiscal 2021 and dramatically so in the following 2 years. For fiscal 2022, the gap between the orange and blue lines represents an extra $3.9 billion of net collections over and above withholding, or about 2/3 of the $5.9 billion gain in total income tax collections from fiscal 2020 to 22. These non-withholding payments come primarily from estimated and final tax payments, less refunds, and except for refunds, are generally related to income earned from a business, from self-employment, or from investments, including capital gains income. A big part of the $3.9 billion positive gap in fiscal 2022 was tax on capital gains. I'll show you my estimates of that on the next slide. The gap has mostly disappeared again more recently, though part of the reason is the implementation of entity-level filing by business pass-throughs. Between $1 and $1.5 billion of tax payments from pass-through entities shifted from personal to corporate income tax in fiscal 2023 and 2024. Finally, withholding collections have benefited from continuing wage and salary income growth, though that has leveled out in the last 2 years, in part due to tax cuts. So far this year, withholding collections are up 0.4% year to year, while the total again is up 2.6%, so the gap is widening a little bit again. I've shown most of y'all this before, so I'll try and be quick on this. The table shows capital gains data reported from 2 sources: anonymized Department of Revenue administrative tax return data covering e-filers, and IRS tabulations of returns that were filed from a Georgia address, so excluding non-residents and anyone who moved out of the state by the time they filed their federal return. From these data, we calculate the amount of tax that would be owed on these gains, assuming the top statutory rate for that year. Tax year 2021 was a great year for gains, as you can see, producing an estimated $3.1 billion in tax that would have generally been seen as revenue for the state in fiscal 2022. That fell nearly in half in tax year 2022 and again by a quarter in 2023, mostly impacting fiscal 23 and 24 respectively. The graph below the table shows the distribution of those gains realized across returns with less than $100,000 in reported gains to those reporting more than $25 million in capital gains. As you can see, that top group reporting very large gains is also quite volatile. But you can also see that tax year 2022 was a big year for capital gains of all sizes, and that the biggest reversal in tax years 2022 and 23 was in the largest gains category, which fell by 84% over the 2 years. We don't know yet how much was reported in tax year 2024. It'll take a little while to get that, and a long time to get 2025. Income growth contributes to state revenue growth in another way through the sales tax. Sustained growth of ordinary personal income, income from a job or a business, or from dividends, interest, and pensions, is the main driver of sales tax revenue growth over the long term. Large one-time transfer payments or investment windfalls are less likely to affect taxable consumption near term in an aggregate sense. Nominal personal income growth in Georgia, excluding transfer payments, averaged about 6.1% per year over the last 5.25 years, while sales tax revenue grew by 8.7% per year on average from fiscal 2020 to 25. So what explains the faster growth of sales taxes than income? Part of it was initially spending the pandemic assistance payments, but that effect pretty much dissipated a couple of years ago. The other big factor has been the mix of consumption spending. Beginning with the pandemic, consumption shifted from services to goods, goods in red, services in green in this graph. The data are for the U.S. because state-level consumption spending data only comes out annually with quite a lag. But the picture is much the same, has been much the same in Georgia through the latest state data available. As you know, goods are generally taxed in Georgia, while most services are not. So the shift boosted sales tax revenue growth for the first 2 to 3 years after COVID hit. The shift back towards services since 2022 has been a drag on sales tax revenue growth in fiscal 23 through 25. But the mix of goods and services consumed has returned to the pre-pandemic mix, so that drag on sales tax collections should be over. But as you can see from the blue line on the graph, personal income less transfer payments, incomes have not kept up with prices. This is the affordability issue in a picture. So to summarize the main contributors to trends in the largest revenue sources, nominal wage and salary income growth has slowed but continues to support withholding collections despite the tax rate cuts. First half fiscal 2025 saw 36 basis points or 6.3% lower tax rates than the year earlier, while withholding fell by 3.6%. Implying year-to-year wage income growth of around 2.9%. First half of fiscal 26 saw an additional 20 basis point or 3.7% lower tax rate, while withholding grew by 0.4%, implying year-to-year wage income growth of nearly 4.3%. The boost to sales tax revenues from spending of excess pandemic savings and the consumption shift from services to goods is over. The inflation boost to sales tax revenue persists but at a lower rate. Year-to-date fiscal 2026 sales tax growth of 2.1% is lower than inflation of 2.8% year-to-year, suggesting slower real spending on taxable goods. Now let's look at a few other broad measures of current economic conditions and performance over the last year to set up for the 26-27 outlook. First up, unemployment. National unemployment rose to 4.5% in November and then back to 4.4% in December from 4.1% a year earlier, while Georgia, meanwhile, has been outperforming on this measure for almost 6 years now. We're at 3.5% as of November, so we're down 1/10 of a point in the last year, and we're 0.6 below the national reading for December. Low unemployment is good for consumer confidence, obviously, supporting taxable consumption, and puts upward pressure on wages, contributing to taxable income growth. Since February 2020, Georgia non-farm employment has grown by 6.7% cumulatively versus 4.7% nationally through November. But for both the state and the nation, job growth stalled in 2025. Georgia gaining about 3,200 jobs over the year, well, at least through November, or about 0.1%. The U.S., meanwhile, gained 584,000 through December, or about 0.4%. Most of the weakness has come in recent months. The U.S. lost 117,000 jobs in 3 months through November before gaining 50 back in preliminary December estimates. Georgia is estimated to have lost about 7,000 jobs in September through November. Growing employment leads to growing output from businesses, which brings us to the broadest measure of economic performance, GDP, or more specifically, real GDP adjusted for inflation. The headline result is that Georgia and U.S. real GDP, shown here indexed to 100 for the first quarter of 2020, have both grown by 14.8% on a cumulative basis from the start of this very short pandemic recession. Georgia outperformed the nation through the end of 2022, lagged briefly in the first quarter of 2023, and has roughly tracked national growth since then. Both Georgia and the nation took another dip in the first quarter of 2025, but both have rebounded since. On to inflation. Y'all have all probably seen this before, so I'll try not to spend too much time on it. But this graph shows the inflation surge that prompted the Fed to raise rates a couple of years ago 11 times in 17 months. Headline inflation peaked at 9% year-to-year in June of 2022, far above Fed targets, but came back down to 2.4% by September 2024. Unfortunately, the decline stalled there until inflation began rising again last June. Both headline and core CPI inflation rose to just over 3% year-to-year in September, the last reading before the government shutdown. Reports for November and December were a little bit lower, but there are also gaps in the survey data, so we'll wait and see how January looks. The green line shows inflation in goods prices, which kicked off the inflation rise in 2021 and peaked at 12.5% year-over-year in February of 2022 before falling dramatically and spending all of 2024 in negative territory, falling prices. It's turned positive again since last April, reaching 1.5% year-to-year in August and September. The grocery component of that reached 2.7% year-to-year inflation in September and ended the year at 2.4% year-to-year. Services inflation, which accelerated while goods inflation was easing, peaked 3 years ago and has declined since, reaching 3.6% in September and 3.3% last month. Monetary tightening that brought inflation down from 9% to 2.4% in 2.25 years ended in September 2024, and the resulting disinflation has stopped as well. So here's a picture of the Fed policy rate over the last decade, the target Fed funds rate, upper and lower bounds. A year ago, we had seen the long pause at the top come to an end with 3 rate cuts as inflation eased. But that was followed by another 9-month pause because with unemployment still low and disinflation stalled, forecasters worried about tariff-induced rise in inflation. Tariff effects on prices take time to work through to consumer prices, especially when anticipation of large tariff hikes led to a surge of imports to build inventories before the tariffs took effect. With the tariffs finally in place, studies from the St. Louis Fed, Moody's, and others have estimated that tariffs added as much as 0.7 percentage points to U.S. inflation by late last year. In other words, if not for the tariff hikes last year, December's inflation reading likely would have been close to the Fed's 2% target instead of 2.7%. Nevertheless, with the labor market softening, the FOMC saw fit to cut Fed funds 3 more times, a quarter point each, in the last 3 meetings of last year. Since the December meeting, the consensus among Fed watchers has been for another pause. As of this morning, Fed funds futures markets are predicting the next rate cut won't come until the first meeting under a new Fed chair in June, with a second cut likely later in the year, probably December. That would bring us to a target range of 3 to 3.25%. Also at the December meeting, the FOMC decided to pause so-called quantitative tightening, reducing the Fed balance sheet holdings of longer-term Treasury and mortgage securities. Instead, the Fed plans to purchase $40 billion per month of short-term Treasuries, T-bills, in what they label reserve management instead of quantitative easing. Personally, as an economist, I worry that's a distinction without a difference, and that though smaller than the quantitative easing of the last cycle, this policy, together with further rate cuts and new tariff threats, will keep inflation at elevated levels for a while longer. Now to some other indicators of where we may be headed, first with a few positives. This graph shows the Fed's so-called financial soundness indicator for banks. Banks' Tier 1 capital as a percent of risk-weighted assets. As you can see, bank capital ratios are quite strong. Banks have been building their capital relative to assets since the disaster of the Great Recession and have continued to do so since the pandemic. Consumer financial health is also strong. Household debt service burdens, shown here in blue, have risen from pandemic lows when many households paid down debts with their stimulus checks, but remain at levels last seen in the late 1990s. Total household debt as a percent of GDP in red here has also been declining since the Great Recession and resumed its decline after the pandemic, bringing this measure back to 1999 levels. Consumer loan delinquency rates for both credit cards and mortgages also remain historically low, as do delinquency rates for business loans. So the consumer is still in good shape financially, and banks are in excellent shape. Good conditions for avoiding a financial crisis should the economy weaken again.
Dr. Bushman, can I stop you there and ask a question for a second? Ms.
Yeah.
Blake. Help me understand this, if I'm reading those lines correctly. You've got household debt as a percentage of income increasing. You've got household debt as a percentage of GDP decreasing.
The blue line
GD
is principal and interest payments on debt.
Okay, so you're adding in the interest, and that's why it's so much higher. So I'm trying to look at the side here. Is it saying, are you saying that 12% of an average family's income is going to pay the interest in the debt right now? Or is it the 75%? Which percent matches me?
Debt
here?
service burden is the left scale.
The left scale.
Debt is a percent of
So the
GDP is the right scale.
So the GDP increasing.
So the denominator is not personal income, but GDP.
So the GDP increasing is what's causing the percentage of household debt to decline as it relates to GDP.
Oh, yeah, that helps, yeah, certainly.
The average family
But the
is
debt
still
service
feeling it.
burden has also gone up because interest rates have risen.
Right. So while we're seeing that red line go down, in the microcosm of a family, they're feeling it still.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Making sure that,
but still at historically low levels. I mean,
well, not as it relates to 2020, maybe.
no, if
Not.
I didn't want to make the graph go back to,
Gotcha.
40 years ago, but it's basically 1990s levels.
So what would be the average percent of household debt and interest that you normally see? Around 20% then? Of their home income? Because you said if we go back to 1990, so I'm just looking at the edge over here where the red line is at 14 or 15%. If we went back to, you're saying it's historically low even though it's at 11.5%, 12% now. What would it be if we pulled that back and looked over the past 40 years?
It would still look low. So the 1990s were basically most of the 90s were probably closer to the late teens there in the graph. There were a few years where it was down closer to 11% like we are now.
And some of this is anecdotal. I'm not sensing that families are feeling that. I sense that they're feeling that they're actually under more pressure right now. And I didn't know if the data is showing opposite or the data agrees with the family.
It's less so debt burdens than prices on everything
Gotcha.
being high.
They're not putting it on their credit card yet. We'll see that soon.
Yeah, I mean, credit cards included in that household debt number. It's just not the only thing included there. Yeah. This may get a little more toward the affordability question. This graph, the first thing that on my list of things to worry about is shows interest rates on mortgages, 30-year mortgages, and auto loans, 60-month auto loans. As you can see, they rose quickly in 2022 as the Fed tightened, and peaked late 2023. Come down a little bit, but are still at levels comparable to 2007, and so still relatively high. Certainly higher than many of us grew accustomed to in the last decade and a half prior to 2022. High interest rates on mortgages and other consumer loans are restraining demand. And in the case of mortgages, locking homeowners with 3% and 4% mortgages into their current homes. These rates are unlikely to be coming down much for the time being. In fact, longer-term Treasury rates have been rising lately. As I noted before, job growth has slowed and since September turned negative. In fact, the rate of new hiring by businesses, or total hires as a percent of existing employees, over the last 18 months has been at the lowest level since 2013. Reluctance by businesses to hire suggests fewer opportunities to change jobs for better pay, and that those between jobs will remain unemployed, or entering the workforce will remain unemployed for longer, dragging on consumer confidence. Consumers also still feel squeezed by inflation. Incomes have not really kept up for the average worker. So consumer sentiment is weak. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, shown here, is sitting at levels typically associated with recessions. Anything that pushes inflation higher again is likely to make matters worse for the average consumer. Oops. Well, I lost my notes for this page. Oh, here they are. Other issues include business confidence, with the Conference Board's CEO survey finding that most CEOs are expecting higher inflation and a slowing economy, also known as stagflation. 64% are expecting that. On the jobs front, again, we still don't have a good idea what impact AI will have on employment. Some observers suggest that that's been a factor in the job slowdown in the last year. But like most economists, I think in the long run, the impact will be higher productivity overall and thus rising incomes. But there will be some pain in some job classifications for a while. We also see rising political instability in the world and also here at home. And finally, we still face risks from trade due to high tariffs, increasing pass-through of tariff costs to consumers, and just in the last few days, new tariff threats. Since last January, the net effect of all of the tariff impositions by executive order and the negotiated rollbacks of some of them has been an increase in the U.S. average effective tariff rate on imports coming into the country from 2.4% to 18% as of October. The bulk of the cost of these tariffs fall on U.S. consumers and businesses, depending on how much cost businesses are willing to absorb to avoid losing sales over the short term. Moody's estimates that as of August, 29% of the cost of these tariffs have been passed on to consumers. 53% have been absorbed by U.S. businesses, harming their profits, and only 18% was being absorbed by foreign producers, again, to avoid losing sales over the short term. The hit to profitability for U.S. businesses has been blamed for record business bankruptcies through 3 quarters of 2025. As time passes, businesses, both domestic and foreign, have to pass more of the cost on to consumers to remain profitable. So we'll see continuing upward pressure on consumer prices. As time we also face risk of retaliatory trade policies, or in some cases, just a refusal by foreign merchants and consumers to buy or stock U.S. goods. Large exporting states like Georgia are the ones harmed the most by that. Remember, we're the 12th largest export state, with exports representing 6.1% of state GDP. Trade volume through Georgia ports has grown 8.5% per year since 2003 and reached $250 billion in value in 2024. We don't have 2025 data for Georgia exports or port activity, but through November, total U.S. trade is down 5.6% from the same months in 2024, with imports down 4.9% and exports falling 7.3%. So exports are falling faster than imports. So to summarize the outlook and put it in the context of revenues, we have a slowdown, no recession yet, but slow real GDP growth, slow job growth, continued higher inflation because of tariffs and monetary easing, modest nominal income growth, keeping personal income tax collections flat even after rate cuts, Slow real income growth, so weak consumer sentiment, and slower sales tax growth. Business costs rising, bankruptcies at record levels, suggesting slower profit growth and lower corporate income tax collections after the rate cuts. We also have lower short-term interest rates and smaller projected balances and undesignated surpluses, so interest earnings will continue to decline for the state. All of which brings us to the revenue budget, which is conservative as it should be, but not overly so. We're projecting a 1.2% decline in general fund revenues for the amended fiscal year, but that puts general fund revenues 2.2% above the original fiscal 2025 budget and already reflects the 20 basis point rate cut the governor has proposed, bringing personal and corporate income tax rates down to 4.99% starting this year. That rate cut has only a part year effect on the 2026 revenue number, taking about 40 basis points off of the growth rate for the full year. The reason it's so small this year is that by the time it's enacted and begins reducing withholding and estimated tax payments, only a month or two will be left in the fiscal year. So the effect gets mostly pushed into fiscal 2027, keeping budgeted general fund revenue growth at a negative 0.4% for next year. Normal growth should resume after that as long-run projections reported in the back of the budget book show fiscal 2028 is expected to see about 4% general fund revenue growth. And with that, I will welcome any questions. I think I went a little bit long, though.
Got a couple, Dr. Bushman. First one will go Representative Ridley.
Thank you. In the book on, I've got different glasses, so I can't see right now. I think it's 393. It talks about job growth in 2025 and through the first 4 months of FY 2026. It says the strongest was healthcare, social assistance, followed by local government. What would your thoughts be on that? If jobs are starting to fall in manufacturing and other jobs like that, but they're starting to produce in more subsidized jobs, what's your opinion on economic outlook for job growth?
I'm not sure I follow the question.
Well, I'm asking, like, in the job growth in the book right here, it's talking about this year that the most job growth was in healthcare, social assistance, and local government.
Yeah.
Why we lost jobs in manufacturing and other ones. Usually when you see that, what's your thoughts on when you start seeing more subsidized type local government jobs or government subsidized jobs increasing?
Well, the important point there is the contrast with manufacturing and jobs like that. The decline in manufacturing jobs is not unique to Georgia. It's been a national trend over the last year. So, I mean, I would, like I said, consumer spending, particularly for middle and lower income households, has been slow. Other than wealthier households continuing to purchase, that's going to be a drag on producing goods. Tariffs, trade policies have impacted manufacturing. Like I said, exports year to date through November are down 7.3%, so manufacturers are not winning.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Senator Lucas, is that you that's got your button?
Yes, sir. Let me ask you a question. What is your projection of federal funds that we normally get that we won't get this coming year?
The division directors within OPB have looked very closely at that and addressed in the budget any, critical needs that are likely not to be funded by the federal government, and where, deciding where we need to backfill. That would be a better question for the different agency heads that as they come through and talk about their budgets.
Well, the reason I asked that question, if we don't get the money,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to make it up, and that comes from the amount of money that we have in our reserve.
Well, no. The critical spending needs, where the funds from the federal government are expected to disappear, have been addressed in the budget. I just can't point you to specific items because, frankly, I'm not an expenditure side guy. The division directors within OPB and the agency heads themselves would be the ones that would be able to answer those questions. It's not in our general fund revenues, the transfers from the federal government. But general fund revenues have been budgeted to backfill where the needs were considered critical by the different agencies and the governor's office and OPB.
All right, y'all gotta mash your buttons or not mash your buttons, so y'all are trying to fake me out. It's Representative Fry.
May I cede my time to Senator Parent?
Thank you, Representative. I swear I am on this committee. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Bushman. We've had a lot of discussions for many years about the notion of lowering the income tax, eliminating it possibly, and these discussions, as I'm sure you're well aware, have ratcheted up over the course of the last year as all of us search for ways to make life more affordable for families that feel pinched. I recall that in a prior position you had publicly shared your views that would not be a good idea, that it was an unrealistic talking point that would almost certainly lead to a massive increase in the state's sales tax. My question for you is, would that still be your view? And if it's not, that you could explain to us a little bit more why your views would have changed as we grapple with this issue.
Well, I have no position on the recommendations of the committee. If you're asking me as an economist, I think what the governor has been doing in lowering income tax rates slowly over time, as we were able to evaluate how much of our surpluses were structural surpluses, is the better way to go. If you can identify different tax preferences, large tax preferences, tax credits that may or may not be working, y'all recently received another batch of tax incentive evaluations. As y'all look at those and decide, well, maybe this one should be cut back, or that one should be cut back, or this one eliminated, using the revenue gains from that, once it's done, to continue to lower rates, I think would be a wonderful thing. Reduces the, that's really the supply side approach to tax cuts, is a broader base, lower marginal rates, same revenue.
Thank you.
President Pro Tem Walker, is that you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Bushman, you talked about our low unemployment rate, really historic low, and it's, I think you said 3.5%, and the nation is 4.4%, something like that, so we're doing really good there. I have read, though, that our workforce participation rate continues to decline, especially with young men. Do you have any data on that, and any thoughts as to why that might be the case?
I did look at that quickly when I was thinking about what to put in here and what to not put in here, but I don't recall any specifics about the labor force participation rate. I do know that the labor force overall has not been growing all that quickly. So that's, lack of labor force growth is going to make it difficult to add jobs in the economy. But unemployment is still low, so the people who are already here and in the labor force are, all but 3.5% of them are doing pretty well.
Would you send me whatever data you have on the labor force participation?
Yeah, I'll
Mention
pull that.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
Going back to your slide on the FY '26 withholding, I think it was. You said withholding was up 4%.
No, 0.4.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, I forget now.
Yeah, the slide said 0.4, and I think you said 4%. I just wondered which was.
Oh, yeah, it's 0.4.
So it's flat, more or less flat on the FY '26 withholding.
We do have at least one more question.
Sorry.
Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. So real quick, because you're painting a picture and I need an explanation. So you're saying the bank's balance sheets are great, consumer balance sheets are great, unemployment is low, but yet consumer sentiment is down to the lowest since the 60s. Could we attribute that to social media? What's driving that sentiment when all other factors are pointing to things are in pretty good shape if everybody would just take a deep breath?
Well, I suppose that social media is at least partly to blame for, people just generally being uncomfortable about the direction of the country from either side. But I think the real problem is that incomes for most Americans have not really kept up with inflation over the recent years, have not really caught back up to higher prices.
So would it be fair to say if we can get our hands around inflation and continue to drive it down, then things should be on the up for folks, for opportunity, for investment, et cetera?
All else the same?
All else the same.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bushman.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Commissioner of Economic Development, Pat Wilson.
Do you want that picture right away, or do you want to call for it?
All right, if you're leaving, please hurry up and leave so we can get going. We're already 15 minutes behind. And turn the volume down a little bit, please. All right, Commissioner Wilson, slow down. Let's calm down a little bit. Floor is yours. Thank you for being here today and not in Davos.
Well, thank you for allowing us to be here today and not in Davos. It's cold over there.
People might throw things at you today, but be careful.
A little closer than usual.
All right, the floor is yours.
Chairman Hatchett, Chairman Tillery, members of the Appropriations Committee, and Dean Green, happy birthday. Y'all, thank you for today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do for the people of Georgia in creating a budget that is conservative, that has the ideals of the people of Georgia, and really the focus that we need in order to continue to be successful. And I want to start by talking a little bit about last year. And I know we just heard from our good friend, the economist, and it seems to be the most predicted recession in the history of the United States. But if you look at the numbers and anecdotally the things that we see on the ground across the state of Georgia, we are in a very healthy state. We've got a healthy economy. We have some amazing things going on, and what is fantastic about what we're doing and what we're seeing is that it's happening in every corner of the state. I want to touch on a few numbers from last year first. Tourism, an amazing year in tourism. $82 billion impact that the tourism industry has on the economy of the state of Georgia. 174 million visitors came to the state last year. Trade, for the fourth year in a row, given all the global headwinds and everything we see geopolitically, for the fourth year in a row, we broke our record on exports out of the state of Georgia. $53.1 billion in exports coming out of Georgia. Our global commerce team, 23,000 new jobs that we announced last year, but we broke our record in investment, $26.3 billion of a new investment to the state. Our centers of innovation worked with 441 small businesses last year. That's another record for businesses served. Film, and while the industry, I'm sure we've all heard, the industry is down overall nationwide, we had the most successful series wrap in Georgia last year, and that was Stranger Things. And y'all may have seen, it is literally everywhere. They hired 3,700 Georgians last year for 890 days of filming with a payroll, just of local Georgia crew, a payroll of $298 million. And y'all know payroll is not something that necessarily goes right into the bank. That's somebody's Little League fees, that's your mortgage, that's your car payment. That is all over the state of Georgia. And then finally, our Georgia Council for the Arts. We administered 363 grants last year. But what I love the most is it went to 151 different counties. That is a statewide impact, and that's something that we're very proud of. But what I want to take a quick look back on, and I love following Governor Kemp this morning, his administration, when we walk out of his administration, we're going to say that the previous decade in the state of Georgia was the most successful, most prosperous decade in the history of the state when it comes to job growth, economic diversity, growing our manufacturing base, and the numbers prove it. But what's amazing, and in his State of the State, he talked about this, this is just our department. This does not count organic growth that has happened in the state. We've announced 219,000 new jobs in the state of Georgia in his 7 years. $118 billion of new investment in his 7 years. And what is amazing about that is 64% of those jobs went to the state outside of Metro Atlanta. 74% of the investment was outside of Metro Atlanta. That's pretty amazing, and that's just what we touched. That does not count, again, all the organic growth that's happening right here in the state. And so while we can say thanks, it really is everybody in this room. You guys have been a part of that story. And I've had the benefit of now working for 3 governors. I have worked with multiple speakers and General Assembly members. It's a partnership, and it's a partnership that this state has benefited from because we've made the state of Georgia the best place in the nation to do business together. You guys have supported great public policy. You've budgeted fiscally well. You've managed us through crises. I mean, I've lived through the recession, and then COVID. We've watched all that happen, and this partnership between the General Assembly and the Governor's office has really made Georgia the success story that is today. So this is just a a way to say thank you to you guys for being great partners, and we look forward to where we're going to go in the future. So on to the governor's amended budget. The new budget, the big budget, is not, there's nothing really for us to talk about there because it is exactly the same as last year. But the amended budget is exciting because the governor made an ad to our marketing for the first time in a very long time. And so if you look in section 429, under our departmental administration, the governor added $3 million to promote Georgia tourism, update agency marketing materials, and enhance business recruitment efforts. So, as many of you know, this is an unprecedented opportunity year for us to make an impression on people coming to the state of Georgia. The General Assembly and the governor have worked to support the FIFA World Cup, which is coming to Georgia this summer. And this addition to our budget is a way that we can maximize that effort and make sure, number one, that people who come to Georgia want to come back, that we show them the diversity, the amazing assets that this state has, that we bring the 158 other counties into Atlanta to help them market themselves so that when people have a great time here, they want to come back and they want to spend money. And so the money for in the amended budget will go toward what I think is an amazing idea from our friends at the Georgia World Congress Center to create an activation at the World Congress Center where we will basically create a trade show to highlight the state of Georgia. So if you have a captive audience and it is July in Georgia and it is hot and people need a break, they need air conditioning, they need a water or a beer or something, we're going to create a space for them in the World Congress Center so that they can come and stop. And while we've got you captive, let me show you a little bit about our state parks. Let me show you a little bit about Providence Canyon. Have you seen Smith Gall Woods? Let me show you a little bit about the Golden Isles. Have you seen tubing in Dahlonega? There's so many amazing things in this state that we can highlight, and we want you to come back and experience it after you've had a great time watching a match at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And so this is a trade show concept that we're talking about putting on in the World Congress Center. And Kevin and the team are going to give us the space free of charge because nobody can be in it. It's inside the security perimeter. Only people who are there for the match can participate. And then we will invite communities to set up a booth, to have an activation, Georgia businesses to come and participate. If you're ASW and you want to have a cocktail, or if you're a Georgia Beer Company from Valdosta and you want to put a beer stand there, we're trying to figure out ways that we can highlight the great assets of the state of Georgia, put them right here, make it easy for people to experience, and do that in a way where all the counties can participate if they want to. And so the only buy-in from the counties is what you want to put in that space. And so we're excited about that opportunity. This money will allow us to do that and support the counties. The other things that we are expecting that we would spend that on are website upgrades. We have got to do a better job of marketing our assets and our communities on our website, make it easy to find, easy to search, so that all of the things that we are doing here are also findable on the website. And then finally, business recruitment. Taking advantage of this year and looking at who are the companies that are going to be coming and participating in the World Cup. How can we grab them? How can we get their attention? And how can we focus on selling Georgia, continuing to sell Georgia? And so just a little context there on this ad in the budget. We went back and looked at previous year's budgets. So 2008 was the first year when I worked for Sonny Perdue that I presented a budget to the General Assembly with him, and we worked on getting that budget passed. At the department in 2008 that year, our budget was $38 million. Our marketing budget was a large percentage of that. It was $17.9 million in 2008. 2026, our department budget is $32 million, and our marketing budget is $8 million. And so if you look at the difference there, we've gone through a recession, we've gone through COVID, there were cuts, there were needed cuts. The office is overall, the department is smaller, we have fewer people, but I'd still think it's the best bang for your buck in state government. And so this $3 million will allow us to really come back and do some things in this unprecedented year to really highlight the state and grab folks and bring them back to Georgia. There's a second add in our budget that I wanted to point out too. In the under tourism, the governor added $110,000 that goes to the Georgia Humanities to really focus on the America 250th anniversary. And so this is an amazing year. And I vaguely remember 1976. I mainly remember it from my great-grandfather giving me silver dollars with the commemorative backing. But this is an amazing opportunity for us to share what America means, and us as one of the 13 original colonies capturing tourists that are coming to events celebrating the 250th. And so one of the things that the governor did and we've partnered with is working with Georgia Humanities and the Georgia Historical Society to really highlight the 250th. And Todd Gross has done an amazing job with the Historical Society, but Mary Wern is our executive director of the Georgia Humanities. Mary, are you a year in now? A little over a year in. The Humanities does a terrific job of selling who we are as Georgians, capturing that and giving it back to whether it's students or whether it's everyday Georgians to highlight what makes us unique about being a Georgian. And so all the three entities are on the Georgia America 250 commission that was put together by the governor. And we are working together to focus on pushing out all the content that your communities are doing to highlight the 250th. And we're very excited about that. That $110,000, I think, will be very impactful to help us do that. And so with that, Chairman, that's really all I have in my budget, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. We got a great story to tell in the state, a great story to celebrate about our country this year. Chairman Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for being here today and the great work that the department has done all across our state and the continued work that we will do over the coming years. With the $3 million in the amended budget, I think you answered it, but would that specifically go to the promotion of World Cup?
Not all of it, but yeah, part of that will. And so, Chairman, what we envision is that money in several different tranches. One is ad campaigns, drive time locations. I mean, we have to spend it this year, and so we have to really push it out. But this is not, because it's not an every year ad. It is something that it needs to be impactful quick. And so yes, a lot of it will go toward that, but not all of it.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Chairman, one additional question, and thank you for the comment you made about what y'all were working toward to bring communities from around our state to Atlanta to interact those who were here for the games. As you know, over the past several meetings that we've had, we've expressed interest in making sure that all of Georgia benefits from the World Cup games being here. And you briefly mentioned America 250 and Humanities being brought in to kind of be a part of that. Are there any other specific plans that have been made, at least at this point, as we begin the 250th celebration?
Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Thank you so much. So I will highlight a couple of the programs that we are working on. It is our 55th year at Georgia Humanities, which is very exciting. So as we approach the 250th anniversary, we're uniquely positioned to roll out programming across the state. So the first thing we're focusing on is America 250 grants. We've gotten state funding for most of the time that we've been in existence, and we're very agile at pushing that money out to local communities. We are also starting this year a new America 250 Legacy program called the Georgia Circuit, which is a speakers bureau where communities, local libraries, museums can have speakers, historians, artists, etc., come to their communities. And another big initiative we have is a museum on Main Street, which specifically addresses rural and small communities, and we bring a national level exhibit that is grounded in the American Revolution to those communities. And we also have 15,000 students every year participate in National History Day Georgia, and this year the focus is revolution, reaction, and reform in history, so we're really excited to get young students interested in this moment in time.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Commissioner, and the great work that you're doing as we continue to bring some great events to our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So there's 5 lights blinking, and I will request everyone, don't tell a story, ask your question, and if the respondent can answer the question quickly. Chairman Hupstetler.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Wilson, for your work around the state, and particularly in my district.
Thank you, Chairman.
As you probably know, last April I'd ordered a study on the data center exemption, which the audits had UGA do, and it shows this year that we're going to give out about $625 million with potentially a lot of local property tax revenue, but very little state revenue. But my question is, I'm hearing that they're also getting the manufacturing credit and the high-tech computer equipment credit. My question is, are you aware of this, or what extent that would be?
Chairman, I'm not aware of that, and I think our friends at the Department of Revenue could probably answer it better. We generally do not work data center projects because they are coming to Georgia. We kind of send them to the utilities.
Thank you.
Representative Hughley. It was Don Zella? I'm sorry. Oh, nope, it's going to be Buckner. Sorry. I'm trying to figure out who was called on. I apologize, Senator.
Well, first of all, I want to say hooray for finally marketing Georgia. Having a background in marketing, I know how much we need that, and I get so tired being in the Columbus market hearing about Robert Trent Jones golf courses. But I do have a little beef. Yeah, Alabama. I do hope that there will be some marketing done other than the great work that's being done by the Georgia Historical Society about America 250. America 250 is this year. It's not something we should have been planning 3 years ago when it was first brought up. And I'm just hoping that we'll do a better job, because South Carolina is doing a much better job than Georgia on the celebrations of America 250.
Well, that's what this $110,000 is going to go toward. And we'll make use of some of the other funding that we get out of the amended budget for that as well. But thank you for that. It's very important, and we're 100% behind that effort, and we'll definitely be picking things up this year. Very quickly.
Senator Harbison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson, for your input. I was wondering 2 things. First of all, I'd just like to say the marketing budget seems to be really low because of the job you have to do, all the great attractions across the state of Georgia, especially in Columbus, Georgia, the longest urban rapids, Spring Opera House, and the Monrovia House, and things like that. So I just want to commend you for doing that particular work. And the Stranger Things success is great. But I wanted to say one thing. The $298 million, is that a level figure we're getting compared to other years? Is that going down, coming up? And I'm asking that in the context of, I understand some people have moved offshore. away from Georgia. Can you expand on that?
On the film industry?
Yes, sir.
So that $298 million was specific to Stranger Things, and so that is so that is a record for any show that is filmed in the state of Georgia. But that show wrapped, and so now we'll move on to the next show. But if you look at film spending overall, our high point was $4.4 billion, which was in 2023. And so this year, I believe we're at $2.4 billion, so there was a significant drop. But I think what you're seeing is a reset in the industry. And it's not that they're going back to California and they're not going to New York. It's that it's cheaper to film in Canada and the UK because of the Teamsters contract that really has raised the cost of filming in the United States, really specifically in Georgia. And so we are going to see a reset where Georgia becomes, I think, the hub of shows, and we'll see more and more shows like Stranger Things that come, and the impact of a show is massive. We still see people going all over the state to experience Stranger Things, going to Rome to the Vecna's house. There's a lot of stuff, lingering impact from shows, and so while it's down, it's still significantly more than it's been for years and years.
Well, thank you very much, and I certainly want to invite you to come down and shoot those rapids.
I've done it. It's fantastic. Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
Representative Donahue?
Did I understand your answer to Senator Hofstadter that you do not support incentives for data centers across Georgia?
No, it's just that we don't work the projects, and so I don't know what they're leveraging to come to Georgia.
Do you support a moratorium on granting data center permits given the tension around the issues?
Well, we are not a policy-making agency, and so we just live within the rules that the governor and General Assembly set. And so, as long as it's community wants them, and as long as they want to be in Georgia, then it's hard for us to say no.
Representative Saines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I appreciate knowing the innovative ways we're spending tourism dollars now. Does the department have any figures on where we rank in terms of total tourism dollars among our other neighbors, states in the South? And what the second part of that would be, what investment we get back from those dollars?
Sure. We can pull that for you. It's really it's hard to compare apples to apples when it comes to tourism. And, we have community spending at a level that is different than many of our states. Like Savannah is a great example. Columbus is a great example. Some of the shining stars in tourism, they spend a huge amount of money too. And so we are able to leverage that together, and we work together. And that's kind of what we were trying to do here, is leverage our communities as well, and we work together. So many times when you look at just state spending in tourism, the number looks low, but if you look at us with our partners, it is very comparable to many of our surrounding states.
Okay, guys, we got to try to stay on schedule. Commissioner, thanks. I want to make sure I understood two things. One, did you say what was our tourism number? 140 million?
The number of folks who visited? 174 million people visited Georgia.
And that we do cap in the folks coming through Hartsfield in that number, right?
Yes.
And that's about 100 million of those, right?
117 or
gotcha.
so.
So around the state, we got about 70, 60 other million?
Yeah, depending on, yes, roughly.
Okay. And then the 3 million you talked about for transportation, we got it in admin. Would there be a problem, or not transportation, sorry, that's the next guy. Tourism, would there be a problem with that admin money moving to tourism since it's for tourism?
Well, it's not all for tourism, and keeping it admin gives us flexibility to do website utilization, and also, as the governor put in there, business recruitment too.
So it wouldn't go to tourism, all 3 million?
not all 3 million is for tourism, but the majority is for tourism. But, there are things like, and as Chairman Meeks mentioned, are there things that will live on? One of the things that will is revamping the website and continuing to make that website better. Those things work for all divisions, and so that's why being in administration gives us more flexibility on where that can go and how we can use it. We can give you a very detailed breakdown of some of the things we're looking at, Chairman. Thanks.
I think that's all the questions. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McMurray, DOT.
See, I envision a world where we give them money for marketing and they run ads
117 million.
on Netflix about films done in Georgia.
All right, we got to keep moving, folks. Turn the rumble down, please. Commissioner McMurray.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this opportunity to present the amended FY26 and 27 budget recommendations on behalf of GDOT. Certainly want to acknowledge our State Transportation Board Chairman Jamie Boswell from the 10th Congressional District's here. Came all the way from Athens, Georgia this morning. Thank you. As I was preparing for this presentation, a quote came to mind, one of my favorite quotes about leadership, and it says, "Of leadership, one must first acknowledge his or her reality." So with that, I want to share some realities as it relates to transportation in the budget. You've heard from the governor, the economist, and Pat Wilson now about some of the great economic successes of the state and sort of where we are. I want to pull that together as it relates to transportation and talk about some of those realities. In fact, Pat should have used this slide. I stole it right off his website, showing the great economic success we've had. How does that relate to transportation? Well, every economic success of a new business relies on the transportation network. And this slide does not even include Hyundai or Rivian and some of the other advanced manufacturing that's going on across this entire state, like Pat talked about, how much new work is being created outside of Atlanta. Well, listen, every one of those businesses relies on a road, a rail, an airport, a seaport, or now inland ports as well, or they may cross multiple modes. So you can see that economic development and transportation are joined at the hip. Another reality we must acknowledge is Georgia's growing. In fact, Georgia Chambers predicts about 2.5 million more people by the year 2050. And to give you some perspective of that, who's been to Houston metro area? That's the equivalent of dropping Houston, Texas metro area into the state of Georgia in the next 24 years. And that population growth is going to happen all across the state, but very specifically in sort of the northeast metro, up sort of the 400, 575, 75 corridor, where more population becomes more demands on our transportation system. Another reality we need to acknowledge, with business growth, especially with manufacturing and ag business growth, and the governor talked about the investment in our timber industry, which is critical to this state, becomes freight growth, because we all like to buy stuff, have it on our doorstep in the morning, and best I can check, we all like to eat well too, and I'm cognizant of the hour as it relates to eating. This chart shows 2015 to 2050. The left side shows the increase in tonnage of freight that's moved on roads and railroads in Georgia. The simple math is freight tonnage almost doubles from 2015 to 2050. I call that having double vision. If you see a truck today, By 2050, there will be 2 trucks there. The chart on the right gives you the cost of congestion because of without significant investment in our roadways. And that number more than doubles. And it's broken down by agribusiness, distribution, and manufacturing. So you can see the inputs of not investing has a negative impact on the bottom line. And again, these charts were developed before Hyundai and Rivian were even done, or underway. So our planning director is working to update our freight charts, and we'll get more information, but you can see the significance. Let me share another reality with you. And this is a little bit deep. I understand the economists, you've already had a full day of economy and economic inputs, but this one really tells the tale. This is the National Highway Construction Cost Index. The red line is the 50 states' actual bid prices over the last few years, starting in 2020, going through calendar year 2024. And that's indexed to other things, such as CPI, which is the green line. We all talk about CPI as an indicator, right? We all understand CPI, but I think you can see the red line is outpacing CPI. The Employment Cost Index is the yellow dashed line sort of to the bottom there. And again, the last one is the blue line, which is the Producer Price Index, which is really an indicator showing covering industries like manufacturing, mining, and agriculture. And it's always a good leading indicator. So the national reality is here that the cost of construction, the increased cost has outpaced all those things. So it's sort of an interesting thing. I've showed this slide many times. And the trend has, this data goes through 2024. The trend is ticking down just a little bit, but it's not coming down fast at all. Now, this is national information. Let me drive this home closer to us here in Georgia and show you from 2021 to FY 2025 what the cost of doing business have become. You can see that resurfacing a 2-lane road has increased by 51%. And that's now about 251,000 miles for a 2-lane road. This number is for just one lane. You can see that urban widening and widening of a road in a rural area from a 2-lane to a 4-lane has almost doubled, both 90 to 99% cost increase over those 4 physical years. Replacing our bridges, 93% cost increase for the bridge projects. And I want you to remember that data point because I'm going to come back to it in a minute. And the bottom table really just shows you what some of the commodities are that make the bigger projects and what those cost increases are. Asphalt up about 60%, aggregate gravel, if you will, 62%, guardrail, metal, 35%, and the beams necessary to do a bridge is about 45% increase. So that's a reality that we've faced here in Georgia. And now we've taken our state budget for the last, back to 2020, and indexed it to that National Highway Construction Cost Index line to see how is Georgia keeping pace with these increased costs. And the difference tells the story, right? We all know that. We've all experienced in our personal life. And the reality are that the costs are outpacing the revenues. And that's at the state level, and guess what? At the federal level, too. In fact, with the federal continuing resolution budgets that we have, there is absolutely no increase in federal budget for the last 2 years. And it looks like we're headed to another continuing resolution for transportation, hopefully this week or next week by Congress. But we expect that investment to be flat. Now, what does all this really mean? It means as we plan projects get delayed because unlike Washington, we do have to live in physical constraint. And so our state transportation improvement plan, which is our 4-year physically constrained program, are so impacted. When costs go up, you basically, to deliver a project that's physically constrained, you have to move a project to the next year. And when you move it into the next year, like the graphic shows, it pushes another project out, and another project gets cascaded into another year. So projects gets cascaded into the future. And we never like having to tell any of you that your project has now been moved out, because I'm pretty sure that in each of your districts, that's the number one project. And I've got a feeling that your number one project is probably more important than your colleague in another district's number one project. At least that's what y'all tell me, okay? So we understand that the pain of that when that happens, but that's the reality we have. But listen, I'm here to give you some good news. The reality of what Governor Kemp has done and the leadership of this committee and our other subcommittees on appropriations over the last 2 years has made a big and marked difference for Georgia. In fact, to make Georgians' lives better. And I want to acknowledge that reality with you and show you what that looks like. So we went back to the same National Highway Construction Cost Index, the blue line, to show you what the inflationary reality has been. But when we go back to amended 24 and amended 25 with the $1.5 billion of additional state general funds in 24 and the additional $1 billion in amended 25, you can see what that's done. That's right-sized us to get ahead of that inflationary impact. Now, that doesn't mean we go back and we've solved all our problems, but it means that we are now gaining ground instead of continuing to lose ground, and that really has been important for us to move projects ahead. So let me remind you how we've used those dollars. Going back to amended 24 and 25, a big investment in airport aid at $98 million. About half of that's to do a replacement airport in Griffin that we would have lost Federal Aviation Administration money if we did not have the money in that budget year, and then to address airports all around the state. The $250 million each year in local roads administration has been huge. I have had no city or county complain whatsoever about getting that additional money. Doubt you have either. Freight program, $500 million in each year. I'm going to take a little bit deeper dive into freight in a minute. Capital construction, $593 million in the amended 24. Again, because projects cost more and we were in physical constraint, we were pushing projects out. In fact, we were able to advance 44 projects, bring them ahead. 25 projects we were brought ahead because there was not funding for it, and we created and started 19 other projects that we would not have the money to start on that you know that need to be done without it. Basically, those 25 projects we were able to advance, we brought them up 40 project years. So if a project moved up 2 years, we call that 2 project years. So those 25 projects advanced 40 project years. And just the inflationary cost range by accelerating those projects saved $75 million to $300 million because we could do them now and not later with inflation, where inflation adds cost. Capital maintenance, again, I showed you that maintenance cost, repaving had increased by about 51%. Again, $50 million to help drive toward getting that better. And last but not least, let me just say thank you again for last year for the Hurricane Debbie and Hurricane Helene funding. That $200 million was vital that we could, again, contract and use our crews to clean up from those devastating storms. Just a note, I'll footnote this, is we've got less than $50 million reimbursement from FEMA so far, so we'll keep you posted on as those reimbursements come in. Now let me show you how we put that money to work, because that is tremendous investment that you've chose to make in amended 24 and 25. We can see that 100% of our capital maintenance money has been expensed. This means this money has been paid out to contractors and vendors. Capital construction, we're about 69% of that money going out the door for work being done. And then the last two are amended 24 and 25 for freight. I'll remind you that we did not have a state freight program until a couple years ago, and we certainly appreciate both the House and Senate Transportation Committees for bringing that forward and you passing that. And so we created a new program that we stood up, and we have advanced 24 projects for that $500 million in each years. Now, you can see that that expenditure is a little slow, but that's because we didn't even have that program, and we started projects and moving projects forward that otherwise we would not have. And let me show you where the big three are that consume about $725 million of those dollars. One is to widen I-16. By the way, these next three projects all will be under contract this calendar year, so we're very excited. That's about $520 million from 24 and 25 funds to widen 31 miles of I-16 up to the Hyundai Meta plant. We know there's 23% trucks on that. That's a high number, by the way. 23% trucks on the interstate is a very high number. And we know that widening I-16 will reduce delay by about 56%. We're going to do this very innovative. We're going to let the contractors bid as far as the money will go. Instead of telling them to build A to B, we're going to say, here's how much money can you build C to D to E. And we'll bid that this summer. Again, I-95, widening I-95 in Savannah from I-16 to South Carolina. South Carolina is widening to 8 lanes right now. we will take 95 to 8 lanes as well. That's about $75 million investment. Again, bids this year. And lastly, State Route 96, which will complete the last 9 miles of a 25-mile corridor that goes from I-75 over to I-16 there in Houston and Twiggs County. We plan to bid this project in June, and we'll complete that 4-lane crossing south of Macon. There's not a lot of east-west freight corridor connectivity south of Macon, and this project does that. So that will consume the remaining amount of those prior year appropriations, and we're very excited to get that out. But building on Amendment 24 and building on Amendment 25, I am so grateful and thankful for the governor making a recommendation of a historic $2.3 billion of state general fund strategic investment in our budget. So let's take a look about what those items are. The first is $100 million to address rural bridge projects that support agribusiness and the timber industry across our state. These funds will be used to address those rural bridges that are ready to be bid, but we didn't have the money. Remember that 91% or 93% cost increase in bridges over the last 5 years? So we are working on bridges that they're stacking up, if you will, that we would not be able to advance otherwise without this $100 million. Now, I'll give you a data point. The average bridge cross is about $6.8 million. So some smaller rural bridges are less, but the average is about $6.8 million. Next, let's move over to State Route 316, that 40-some-odd mile corridor from Gwinnett County, I-85, all the way to Athens, Georgia, University Parkway. Traffic on that varies anywhere from about 30,000 to up to 108,000 vehicles per day, with about 12% trucks. Now, the thing about 316 that you all know is there's a lot of crashes. In fact, about 1,300 crashes per year. In fact, 6 of the intersections on State Route 316 are in our top 50 highest crash locations in the state, and 3 more crack the top 100. That's not the list you want to be on. The other thing we see is when the crashes happen, they're very severe. In fact, 4 intersections have higher crash severity than anywhere else in the state, and one of them is almost double the severity index, which is not a good thing. Listen, if you've driven 316 lately, you can see that we have 18 intersections being converted to either interchanges, overpasses, or a better access point along the way. But this $200 million the governor put in the budget is absolutely vital for us to be able to work toward addressing the remaining 13 intersections that need to be addressed to complete that corridor. So we're very excited and thankful that this corridor ultimately can be converted to very similar to like an interstate or a freeway type experience to get you back and forth from Atlanta to Athens along the University Parkway. Next, again, for GMA and ACCG, a home run, another $250 million, which basically is double the local maintenance improvement grant money. Again, we have been using this, the cities and counties have been using this primarily for resurfacing because of that data point I told you. They're able to basically continue to resurface their programs across the state for cities and counties. The other thing we've been committed to is get these dollars out quickly. So we do this through an electronic application process, and the cities and counties sends our list. We get the money out very quickly. We want to make sure that these dollars are being deployed across the state. Next is a big project. Has anybody ever experienced the express lanes on I-75 South in Henry County going the wrong way for you? Yes, okay. All right, we'll move to the next slide. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Chairman Carpenter want to know how can you be wrong every time, because I flip the coin and I'm not very lucky. But listen, post-pandemic traffic patterns really change. In the middle of the day, there's no longer a trough where traffic patterns dip down and pick back up in the afternoon. They build in the morning, they just keep building all through the day. Really change things around. Listen, almost 200,000 vehicles per day, 20 to 25% trucks. You know it, you see it. Everybody experiences this corridor. This segment of I-75, in fact, rated the 12th most congested freight bottleneck in the nation. Another list we don't want to be on. You know it, you experience. So currently, like I say, how can you be wrong half the time? Well, 45 to 50% of the time, you can't get the traffic in the direction it needs to go. So what our plan is we take, instead of 2 lanes reversible, you'll have 2 lanes in both directions along that corridor in Clayton and Henry County. So that's always going in the right direction for you. We know by doing that 70% more people can utilize the lanes, and 70% more people can travel through that in corridor whether you're using the lanes or not, because it becomes less congested.
Mr. Commissioner.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
How far south are you going with that?
Okay. I'm assuming Dublin would be a good answer, but
That would be great. All the way to Macon would be nice, but do we know how far south we can take it?
So, yeah, thank you for that question. Let me tell you what this money does, because that is an important aspect of what we can do. Is this money it's a big number. Just to be real candid, it's a big number. This money is going to basically help us design it, do the permitting. We have to buy property, and goes toward construction. So we will be working with CERTA, the toll authority. This is in payments to CERTA. So we'll work with the toll authority to figure out how do we optimize these dollars, because you will need more dollars than this to actually build the entire project. And what we want to do is make it go as far south as we can. And we'll look at limits on both the north and the south side. But this dollars gives us the ability to basically leverage these dollars to go further. And that's what our intent is to do. We know where traffic stops down at Bill Gardner Parkway on 155 coming in, and we know that you're stuck going south as well. But these dollars are absolutely critical. I'd say it's the minimum amount, too, that's necessary to give us confidence that we can advance this project. So let me get into the budget now, and I know I'll try to get you way back on schedule. We're going to jump into the actual budget now. I just want to hit those again. Big thanks for the governor for the state general funds to do some amazing things for Georgia. Here's just the overall look at Amendment 26. It's on Governor's book, page 39. Basically, it's a true-up in excise tax, because the 26 amendments based on the 25 actual collections. So what was collected in 25 is appropriated at 26. That's been trued up, $71.7 million. And you can see the $2.3 billion in state general funds I've talked about. I always like to show this slide. This shows where the money goes. Where is this money being investment? Well, obviously, the payments to CERTA is the express lane project that I just talked about at a little over 1.8 in all-in payments to CERTA. Capital projects, again, 34%, routine maintenance 11%, and then you see general operations about 6% on down the line. But I just want to show you where that money goes. Let's jump into the budget itself. If you look at page 361, you'll see there are major changes in the budget. Let me say this, too. Let me say a thank you for the governor putting in the $2,000 one-time pay supplement to our employees. We had a lot of dedicated employees working in the wee hours of Saturday night into Sunday morning so that you could be here today. We cleared all that snow out just amazingly. Thanks to the sun. We appreciate that. You can see that our bond debt's going down a little bit, which is good. But I just want to highlight the capital construction. That shows the $200 million for 316 added into capital construction, plus about $37 million of excise. So we took the excise, that additional excise, and the amendment, put it into capital construction. And capital maintenance, you can see $100 million for the bridge replacements that I talked about, shown up there in capital maintenance as well. On the next slide, I'll just jump into these, highlight a few things, which is on page 362. The LMIG increase, about $7 million, again, added to LMIG because of the increase in excise to our budget. You can see the $250 million of local roads administration that I talked about. And then really important is routine maintenance. Again, the men and women out in GDOT taking care of our roadways and roadsides and our contractors that we do. We added $21 million to that to, again, deal with increased cost in maintenance contracting and just increased material cost. And also that has about $4.3 million of the state one-time funding for employees, a $2,000 supplement in there. So you can see what that increase is. And of course, lastly is the big one, is the $1.796 million in additional funding for the payments to CERTA for the 75 South Express Lane. Let me jump into 2027 very quickly. This is tabulated on page 41. Is basically the excise is the estimate of where collections are forecast to go at $2.6 billion. Transportation trust fund fees are based on 25 actual appropriations, so that's getting rectified. So what was appropriated last year being brought into the amended budget, which added $15.5 million. The transit trust fund fees, those are those rideshare car service fees, $3.8 million add based on collections in FY25. The reduction in state general funds are a combination of several things, but part of that is a little bit of reduction in diesel locomotive excise tax. But it recommends a total increase of $148.2 million to the base budget for a grand total of $2.946 billion. Again, this slide shows where is the money being used, very similar. Obviously, the payments to CERTA line goes down because the 75 South Express lanes are not in there, but you can see 53% of the budget is in the capital programs, 20% is in maintenance, 10.5% is in general obligations, and 10% is LMIG, but just showing you where the money's going. Very quickly, if you turn over to page 363, I'm just going to highlight two things. Capital construction, the increased excise, we put $112 million into, increased $112 million, and excise was $98.7 million to the capital construction program, and then 14.5 for additional cost increases as well. And then at the very bottom, you can see the rail. I can show you that again. It's a little bit of the diesel tax on locomotive diesel reduced. Now, all the negatives on this chart are mainly due to the reduction in state health benefit rate changes, so I'm not going through all that. If you see a deduction, that's usually where it's tied to. And all those deductions were put back in the capital construction. On the next slide, just again, LMIG got the increase there to be 10% of excise collection. If you go to page 366, you can see routine maintenance. Again, $33.5 million added for the increased cost, just trying to take care of doing business. And I just want to highlight traffic management, $4.4 million increase. That's dealing with increased cost that we have had last year or in the current budget year. There was a $2.3 million decrease for the state health benefit plan, but also we've experienced our contracting for our TMC. When you call 511, those are all contract employees. And so that has gone up, as well as our ITS, camera signs technology, just like your cell phone bill and cable bill keeps going up. Our costs go up on those things too. We use a lot of technology to keep people moving. So in conclusion, I just want to thank the governor for his budget proposal that absolutely moves Georgia forward for us to remain our #1 state to do business, as transportation is so vitally important to our business of Georgia. I really appreciate your support of the State General Fund over the last 2 budget years. I wanted to demonstrate where those dollars are being used, and that the dollars are absolutely being used. They're making lives better for all Georgians, no matter where they live. This is across all of Georgia. And I just want to pledge to you is that through this budget, you can count on GDOT to get it done. So with that, I'll be glad to entertain any questions or comments. And the last thing is the quote. I love this quote because you make this possible. The future is not something we enter. The future is something we create. So thank you for giving us the ability to create the future that all Georgians want. Thank you so much.
The longer you talk, the more light started blinking. Chairman Ron Stevens, is that you? No. Okay. Mr. Chairman Jaspers.
We're sharing, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'd like to take a moment, members, to recognize Commissioner on what we know that he does a great job every day, especially this upcoming weekend with the storm coming in, of how good a job he does. He's been selected chairman of AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, for this upcoming year. And besides that, it's just been a great honor. He'll be looking at the state response to the federal budget that's coming down. And Russell, we just want to thank you for what you've done for Georgia and that recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, sir.
Chairman Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Great report. I appreciate your enthusiasm so much. We're a big fan of Peach Pass when we're going the right way. So with the new lanes, will they also have the Peach Pass going with it? And is that a big revenue generator, or should be a big revenue generator for our state, Peach Pass?
So yes, you will continue to be able to use Peach Passes as we deploy this project, and the revenue will be something that we actually model and look at as how do we work to finance the project. So that is, you try to let those revenues offset your cost, and so we try to use the less public dollars as possible for those lanes. So, but this, what's in the budget is sort of the bare minimum, to help us offset the cost, which will be much higher than the $1.796 billion. Yes, sir.
Chairman Hawkins.
Mr. Chairman, I've got two quick questions. One, we were told as the price of oil went up, price of asphalt went up. Now that price of oil is coming down, are we going to see slower increases in asphalt?
I think petroleum products drive asphalt. We actually have seen prices come down some, but not probably at the rate that we might have thought.
Right.
But then you look at the other components, the aggregate, which is about 60% increase, labor has increased, all those other components. So we have seen that come down. In fact, some of my FY24 numbers were higher than my FY25 numbers. So we have seen a small retreat, but we haven't seen it go back to 2020 year numbers.
And the number two, Hall County's proud of you, and there's Hall County Sun. The question is, how soon are you getting the signs up on 985 to get out of the left-hand lane?
Mr. Chairman, I moved even further north into Hall County, and I have observed your same headaches. We'll try to work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, I just need to remind everybody that we have to take members' questions of the committee. Chairman LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, appreciate the great report and how thorough it was and informative. I've got a question about related to the federal government shutdown, and I'm aware there were some concerns raised at some recent board meetings about potential lapses in funding.
Please.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, thank you. So, interestingly enough, at the federal level, the federal gas tax allows money to continue to flow. The challenge is, though, they only appropriate on a continuing resolution. You get one daily pro rata share of your money. And so it's hard to run a business to develop projects if you get 1/365th of your funding when you only get a month or 2 weeks continuing resolution. So the good news is the money keeps flowing so we can pay contractors and vendors for what they've done. The challenge becomes is how do we advance another federal project when there's not the guarantee that you're going to get that federal money to reimburse them. So that's the balancing act we have. The federal government lets you do an IOU with them, and we take advantage of that so we can try to keep projects moving because we don't want to slow things down. But at some point, we have to, the IOU is we pay it forward with our state funds, and then as soon as there's, quote, real federal money, we reimburse ourselves. So we can't get ahead of our skis, and we don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy by fronting the federal budget too far. So that's always the peril we're in at this time of year, and we watch it closely. Matter of fact, I've got a meeting this afternoon to talk about that very thing, is what does next month and the next month look like for letting with federal projects. Hopefully they'll get a continuing resolution passed for the entire budget year this week or next before the end of the month, which gives us certainty.
Appreciate you being prepared for that. And one more quick question related to the express lane. I was a beneficiary this morning driving up from Valdosta. Hit the northbound express lane. It worked great. So I think that's been a tremendous success. How would you compare the original Peach Pass on I-75, the funding that required, to the funding for this expansion, and any key differences between the two projects?
Yeah, so it was originally funded through GDOT, and there was a small bond sold for that project way back then through the Toll Authority. And you know, when that's been in, I forget how long it's been in existence, but that was probably a couple $100 million project back then, maybe $500 million, I'm guessing. But now, obviously, with this cost increase that we've seen over the last 5 years, historic, basically double in pricing, so it's a lot more than it was back then. But and then again, when that was put in place, traffic patterns where everybody went into Atlanta in the morning and out in the afternoon, and we didn't have this thing in the middle of the day that we're all experiencing now, which is not going to go away.
Thank you.
Whit Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to also reiterate what Chairman Jasper said. It is just a pleasure to serve with such a gentleman like yourself. I'm always worried that DC is going to scoop you up and take you out, so I hope that never comes. But my question is, you and I have had conversations about this. I'm very happy about the governor's proposal to put in the extra lanes there coming through Henry County. At 4 a.m., there's not a bunch of traffic. But what there is a lot of at 4 a.m. is semis parked along the median. And I know you've talked about, some solutions for that. Do we have any plans to maybe put in some more, rest areas for that? Because to me, it just seems like a recipe for disaster when you got 60, right. Literally 60, 100 trucks parked along the median in and out of exits, and they're sleeping there because they have nowhere to park. I just want to pose that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a recognition of all the freight tonnage that's being moved through Georgia and culminates right here in Metro Atlanta. So we are working at our rest areas, visitor centers, and way stations to increase parking in the land that we own. So we have projects underway, I think, at every visitor center, rest area, and way station. It's in design at this point, and we'll continue to bid those and build those as we have funding. We're using a combination of state and federal funding to try to address that. And it's still going to be hard to address that need as we continue to grow. Private sector needs to help solve that issue for sure, but we've got to try to make it safe. And it's like I said, they're stacked up. And the later the night or the earlier the morning, the freight volumes, like I said, were 20 to 25% on I-75, but at 4 a.m., they're probably about 80 to 90% on 75.
What are y'all doing at 4 a.m. on the interstate? Representative Glaze, last question.
Early bird.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm at 85, exit 61. You're now making sure that we can get through there, and the soccer headquarters is accessible. We appreciate you. The question is, are there any state or local projects that have been put on hold or stopped because of the infrastructure grants?
So in Georgia, and then that's a federal infrastructure grant.
Yes.
The answer is yes. The Stitch project over the downtown connector was one of those grants that got held up. There's a Beltline project that has moved forward. It got held up a little bit, but it's moving forward. But those are the two, there's a third one. There's also a trail in South Fulton Trail there, I think, that is did not meet the requirement of the federal government. Those are all federal decisions. We're not involved in those.
Will there be any kind of backfilling then for those projects, or will they be looked at from the state level?
We probably don't have a budget program that sort of fits those, but there are some other federal budget programs that could be that you could use other fund sources for. We can talk offline about some of those. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I gave you some propaganda. Please look at it. It's very helpful. A lot of helpful information here about how the money gets spent and our transparency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up is Commissioner of Agriculture, Tyler Harper. All right, y'all. Let's try to get this done and get the Commissioner Harper to see how short he can make his presentation so we can get lunch. All right. Commissioner Harper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the levity and definitely appreciate the fact that we still have the opportunity to have those particular jokes. I apologize I didn't bring my stool today. It is still on the Senate floor. I no longer have it anymore. But hopefully what I lack in stature, Mr. Chairman, over the last couple of years, we've been able to make up for in our efforts together to ensure that our number one industry continues to be successful. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Chairman Tillery said that we didn't budget for a stool. So.
Yeah. Amen. I appreciate that, actually. So Chairman Hatchett, Chairman Tillery, members of the Appropriations Committee, members of the General Assembly, It is an honor to be here today to talk about what we have going on at the Department of Agriculture and our budget request and things that are happening in our number one industry. As many of you know, the state of agriculture across the country is in pretty tough times right now. So it's critical that we have agency and an agency that can continue to help through those difficult times. And that's the role that we have at the Department of Agriculture in ensuring that our agricultural industry is successful every single day. And I realize that I'm the last one before lunch, but how appropriate to talk about agriculture than right before lunch. And that's what we're here to do today. So just a brief overview. As all of y'all know, agriculture is our number one industry. I don't have to tell you that. We're the number one state in a number of different commodities. We do phenomenally well. We grow almost 200 commodities in our state. But in addition to it being the number one industry at the department, we do a lot of other things, like we weigh the lottery balls. Most people don't know that we do that. You know, we inspect gas pumps and structural pest control companies and entities. There's a lot that we do as an agency that ties back to the success of our number one industry. But as I said, our number one industry can't be successful if the agency that oversees it isn't successful as well. And working together over the last couple of years, we've been able to work toward that goal and continue to allow our agency to have the resources it needs to be successful. We have a little over about 570 employees in the Department of Agriculture, over 22 different divisions and programs. Whenever you talk about the number of programs, that number gets significantly larger. We have over 70 different licenses that we issue as an agency to the tune of over 88,000 licensed entities. Our funding split is about 80-20 between federal and state dollars. And in addition to the 4 program areas we have at the Department of Agriculture of marketing, administration, consumer protection, and now the Rural Center, there are 23 different other entities that flow through the Department of Agriculture. So there's a lot of pass-through funding that goes through us to other entities through our budget. And so we have about 23 attached agencies at the Department of Agriculture. Talking about one of those 4 program areas, working with y'all last year, the Rural Center was moved from the University System of Georgia to the Department of Agriculture. That was official on July 1st. That really didn't become officially official and fully integrated under the department until January 1st. There's a lot that goes into that with employee movements on calendar years versus fiscal years, but all of the Rural Center is now completely integrated in the Department of Agriculture. It was a smooth transition between us and the University System of Georgia. Many of you know we have a new executive director there now named Charlie Fiveash, who has hit the ground running with the other employees at the Rural Center in ensuring that we're doing the job that we are tasked to do. That is working in rural communities across our state on things like healthcare and education and workforce, and how working with the ag sector in those communities, we can ensure that particular community can be successful. Because if we don't have quality access to healthcare, education, and workforce, the number one industry in those rural communities can't be successful, which is agriculture, and that's what we believe the Rural Center does every single day, and we're going to continue to move forward with that mission. Just to give you another point, the Rural Center is now completely housed in department provided facilities at our lab in Tifton, Georgia. We were able to move some space around there with federal state and provide some lab space for them. Something I know that is on the top of mind of a lot of people. The governor talked about Hurricane Helene this morning in his comments. I want to briefly give you an update there really quick. The Georgia Development Authority, as many of you know, is one of those entities that falls under the Department of Agriculture. Thanks to your help, we were able to secure significant funding to ensure that our farmers and farm families were able to get on their feet. As of the end of this month, we will completely close out the GDA loan program. We will have issued 488 loans for a total of $164,583,723 that are going to farm families significantly impacted. 25 million, or actually about 15 million of that was funds that GDA brought to the table from Safety 21, from the previous hurricane, and we were able to add to the $150 million pot you gave us. Forestry obviously has the $135 million. I know Director Sabo is going to speak more directly to that in his presentation to you on Thursday as to where the status of that is. It is a partnership between GDA, the Development Authority, and Georgia Forestry Commission, and they've taken the lead on that, and I will let him discuss that. In regards to the block grant, as many of you know, we announced in October that Georgia will be receiving over $531 million in block grant funds to help farmers, producers, ranchers, and timberland owners across our state continue to recover from Hurricane Helene. We are in final review with USDA. Matter of fact, I talked to the Secretary's office this morning, and they gave me confidence that it is moving through the OGC review process quickly, but as soon as they give us the green light, we will be rolling fast. I feel very optimistic that we are very close to that, but at the department, we have already set up everything we need to get rolling. We already have the application ready to go. We have a website that's already live, farmrecovery.com. That's what this is a snapshot from. We have already put together FAQs that's already public for farmers for every single commodity that is covered by the block grant, so you can go ahead and have the documentation you need prepared, ready to go once that application period opens. This is significantly different than Hurricane Michael. We couldn't use that plan because this process was significantly different. It was different in many, many ways. It was in some cases the inverse of the way the process worked with Hurricane Michael and how that block grant worked. But we are covering more commodities, more producers than any other state that has a block grant. I've been told that directly by USDA, and I think that is something that we as a state should be proud of. We are covering more people, more producers, more commodities than anybody else through our block grant program. But we have got everything ready to go. Our banking structure is in place, and we have hired a retired USDA FSA employee who is running the program for us, and we have hired a number of other retired USDA employees who are very familiar with USDA programs and programming. They are experts in this field, which is why we brought them on board, and they will be the ones that will help us execute this block grant and get this funding out to our producers as quickly as possible. If you want to find out more, obviously farmrecovery.com is the website, and that's where we're encouraging folks to go. As many of you know, we also have the Farmland Conservation Council. An update on that really quick. This time last year was when all of the council members were appointed by the various entities that were appointing those particular positions. That had to be done before we could really go to work. Once that council was put in place, we hit the ground running, working with the council to get rules and regulations set up. Those went through the entire 60-day process like it has to go through at the end of September. That was completed. We began working on the application. The application is now with the council. They are supposed to be getting that comment back to us on their review comments on the application. Once the council approves the application, that application will go live to begin protecting farmland in the great state of Georgia. And we look forward to doing that and appreciate our partnership in doing that as well. As y'all know, we've been dealing with a lot of high-path avian influenza over the last couple of years. Just this week, last week, we had our what we consider the fourth detection of a commercial poultry flock in our state, and it was in Walker County. Our team immediately went to work. We activated our emergency operations center at the Department of Agriculture immediately. In less than 12 hours, we had the site completely locked down and every farm in the quarantine zone completely quarantined to ensure that the virus would not spread any further than where it was. Y'all know poultry is in Georgia, it's our number one ag commodity. Over a third of Georgia agriculture is poultry. We are the number one poultry state in the nation, so it is a significant issue for us that we face every single day. And I want to say thank you to the members of the General Assembly. Last year, you appropriated $450,000 to the department to help us get the resources we need to be as best prepared as possible. But to kind of put it in perspective, in fiscal year 25, HPAI cost the Department of Agriculture over $300,000 to respond. A lot of that was due to our significant hands-on response in those particular cases, because not every poultry integrator and every company that we work with has the same resources and tools to respond to those particular events. Thankfully for us, the last two responses those integrators and those companies have additional resources they've been able to bring to the table. So it's not cost the department as much to respond. But still, at the height of this response in Walker County, as an example, we had over 70 people deployed in response to HPAI. That includes department employees as well as private employees and others. So it is a huge response. There's a lot that goes into this. But in Georgia, we've done a really good job. 200 million birds affected nationwide, only 500,000 in our state. I think that goes to show the work that we've done as an agency, the work that industry has done in biosecurity to help ensure that we keep this out of the state of Georgia. We still got a lot of work to do, but it's not going away. Just in the last 30 days, 29 states, 67 flocks, over 1.84 million birds have been impacted by HPAI in the last 30 days alone. We know this is going to be a continued effort that we've got to work on together, and we appreciate our work in doing that and appreciate your help in helping us ensure that we're able to respond as quickly as possible. I'm going to briefly mention this. The yellow-legged hornet is something we're still dealing with. Just to put it in perspective, this is a dashboard we have at the Department of Agriculture. We've done 92,500 inspections looking for this thing over the last 2.5 years. It is a threat to our honeybee, as you know, but this takes resources away from other things that our staff normally does on a day-to-day basis. Now we have the cotton jacid. We also have the spotted lanternfly. Those are other things that have come to fruition in the last 2 years that the department has a responsibility to respond to protect our agricultural and our industry and our food security in our state. Some of this we get offset funding from the federal government in response, but it doesn't cover our entire cost. Especially when you talk about taking employees off of their normal day-to-day job to respond to these incidences, it increases our workload as an agency, and it's definitely something we continue to respond to. Briefly on the hemp program, I know this is something we've been working on over the last couple of years. This is a snapshot of our dashboard that we have on our hemp program, too, that we have at the Department of Agriculture. Since we really have been locking down on ensuring that this is taken care of, our team has done over 1,100 inspections. We found over 1,200 violations. Those violations range in a lot of different ways, but to give you an idea, the number one violation we find is lack of certificate of analysis. We find lack of warning labels, and we also find that they're still trying to sell stuff that looks like food or candy, which is something we're taking a hard stance against. Just to put it in perspective, we've done those over 1,100 inspections with 5 people. They've been really hitting the ground running hard. We have 2 license coordinators, thanks to your help, that are working on getting those 8,000 licenses issued. That's brought in over $2 million in revenue to the state. Now we know where these entities are. We can regulate them. Of those 1,200 violations, 54 of them have been referred to our law enforcement division for criminal investigation. Actually, 81 of them have been referred for criminal investigation. 27 of those have been related to under 21 issues where we have done undercover stings and found issues across the state, and we have been locking people up and taking people to jail for doing things that they shouldn't be doing. We've been doing that in conjunction with local law enforcement. The other 54 are different other criminal investigations ranging from selling things that they shouldn't be selling and calling it hemp. We've been doing a lot of that work. We get about a little over $1 million to operate our hemp program, and like I said, it brings in a little over $2 million in revenue to the state. Obviously, we're working with the resources that we have, but appreciate your help as we continue to work together to keep this out of the hands of folks that don't need it and allow it to be a successful program at the same time. The GATE Trust Fund, or the Georgia Ag Trust Fund, we primarily use this, and I'll brief over this really fast. Every year we're required to send a report to this OPB, the House and Senate budget offices, on the funding and how we allocate that funding through the trust fund. That report is available to anybody that wants a copy. If you would like a copy, I think we have a few with us. If you would like a copy, please see Catherine Russell on our policy team. She can make sure you get a copy of this report. I would encourage you to get it. It is I think it's a great report. I think it really details out the work we've been doing on the farmers markets and the work we've been doing elsewhere across the state. But just to put it in perspective, our farmers market bring in over $1 billion a year in produce sales in the state of Georgia. $1 billion a year. That is a lot of activity. And so our farmers markets are important to our state. And we use this funding, in addition to the other funding that you have helped us with, to help upkeep our markets. But it's not a lot of money. It's only a couple of million a year, and that doesn't go very far when you're talking about significant amounts of issues and maintenance that are required to help us upkeep our markets. All right, moving into the budget. The governor's budget I'm just going to be very brief here. He provided us some significant investments, and we're very appreciative of the governor and our work together in ensuring that our agency continues to be successful. Some of this I'll mention in just a second, but these are some things that we asked for, and the governor helped provide some of that funding for us. An inspection software for food safety, $1 million when it comes to our employee retention programs, but also some shortfalls that we have. I'll talk about that in just a second. Some cost of living adjustments and including the $2,000 supplement that he mentioned in his State of the State. We are appreciative of that. I'm going to really get into more of this in just a second, but the governor included a lot of the funding that we have asked for, but we really appreciate our work with him to ensure that our employees and our agency has the resources it needs to do its job. Obviously, he upped the Georgia Grown Wood program that we've been proud to partner with the Georgia Forestry Commission on as a direct partnership through the department and the commission. And obviously, we're working through that to promote Georgia Grown Wood and find ways to recruit companies to our state to help us continue to allow our forestry sector to be successful. It's taken some significant hits in the last year, significant hits. And we've got to work together to ensure forestry is successful, and we're proud to be part of that partnership and continue to work with the Forestry Commission and others to promote our forestry sector and what we're doing. This is the governor's FY25 budget recommendations. Again, additional funding for software that we asked for, some adjustments related to COLAs and other things where we had where we had some shortfalls, and in addition to that, making some adjustments in the budget related to other things that were put in the budget last year. Obviously, the center's budget continues to be the same. Our capital projects in the budget, the governor included, were vehicle replacement, funding for the lab at the farmers market, as well as the final recommissioning funding that we need for our Tifton laboratory in Tifton. We would appreciate your help in keeping that funding from the governor in the budget, but in addition to keeping that funding in the budget, we do have some additional needs. I will start obviously with the vehicle funding that the governor included. As I have mentioned to y'all every year, at the Department of Agriculture, we have significant turnover when it comes to our vehicles. We are just trying to catch up. When I walked in the door at the department, we had an over $3.5 million need in vehicles alone. Y'all have helped us whittle that down. But our agency, just like any other state agency that utilizes vehicles, we have a constant yearly need for that. We would appreciate your help in funding that and our work together to help us continue to fund that need year in and year out. In many cases, this is our employees' office, is that vehicle, because that is how they do the job that we ask them to do every single day. In addition to that, the new lab that we have talked about last year, many of you know we had the food safety and dairy lab was in the ag building across the street. Times are different now. Thanks to your help last year, you included funding for design for a new lab to go at the farmers market in Forest Park here in Atlanta to help us meet our demand currently and also look toward the future. The lab space here on Capitol Hill just was not meeting that need. We were having to send samples out of state to be taken care of because we didn't have the space to do them here. And you can imagine if we ever had an outbreak or a huge concern, that timing is of the essence. And it's critical that we have the resources in our labs to be able to do the job. We have a lab footprint in Tifton. I would love to take y'all there if you're ever interested and show you what we do in Tifton. And Tifton has space to serve as a backup to the lab here in Atlanta. The lab in Atlanta mainly houses our food and dairy divisions. The lab in Tifton houses things like fuels and metrology, seed, feed, fertilizer, those things. Our Tifton lab can serve as a backup. Unfortunately, Atlanta in its current capacity cannot. We are currently using space at Georgia Tech to the tune of over $1.1 million a year in rent. So it is costing us significantly as an agency. So we would appreciate your help in helping us build the lab and the space that we need to operate as an agency. Our estimates are $34 million. I've been working with GISFIC, or we have as an agency, for construction. I understand that they are not complete with their finalization right now, but in our conversation, they have led me to believe that our number, based on the need that we have shared with them, is the number to continue to pursue. And so we're asking for, in addition to the governor's $25 million, we would appreciate the additional $9 million to complete the construction amount needed for our farmers market lab, and we would be happy to dig into that if needed as to exactly what all of that covers. In response to operational needs that we have, the governor funded about $2.5 million of our little over $3.8 million ask. That's everything from computers to software needs that we have as an agency. A lot of those software needs are critical for us. We're trying to find new ways to enhance our inspection systems to be more efficient and more effective as an agency. So that funding is critical. So we look forward to working with you to hopefully obtaining the additional amounts of that funding we need, especially for our software program. In addition to that, as an agency, we have completely been significantly impacted. During the last year, the Biden administration, we saw a $1.1 million cut in federal funding to our agency. That is a significant hit to us. And it has caused significant issues, obviously, for our budget, and because those programs still have to continue, we got to find ways to fund those. So we're asking for your assistance in helping us address those issues and continuing to find ways to help fund the needs we have. We also are asking for funding to help cover the shortfall of the COLAs and the pay raises that the General Assembly provided our agency. That was not enough funding to cover our entire agency and cover the need that we have as an agency. We are still trying to ensure that those employees are covered. In the same way when it comes to federal funding. Whenever we do pay raises, I have employees that are funded 50% state, 50% federal. We still cover those employees' pay raise, and work with the feds to hopefully get a reimbursement increase so we can cover that portion of their salary. Unfortunately, in my 3 years, I have asked every year, we continue to ask every year, we have yet to get the reimbursement from the feds to cover that portion of the pay raise. So we are covering that internally in our own budget, finding ways to do that. And so it makes it difficult for us as an agency, as operational costs continue to increase, and as you try to find those ways to cover those costs for those employees that deserve that funding, it puts a strain on your budget. So that's why we're asking for this operational funding increase to give us the resources we need to provide our agency the tools it needs to do the job that we are asked to do every single day, and help us take care of our people and our employees, and with your help, we can do just that. Finally, I'll hit on this really quick to put it in perspective. Since I walked in the door in 2023, we have seen a 33% increase in licensed entities in our state, 33%. In that same time period, we have increased our employment by around 12%. It was about 500 when I walked in the door. We're about 570 now. We still have about 80 or so vacancies. Even though we've increased employee count by about 12%, employee workload has increased by almost 14%. Because of the number of entities that we have to oversee, regulate, and inspect. So, just because we've increased the amount of people that we have on our payroll doesn't necessarily mean that we have gotten more efficient. We have actually increased the workload on our people, and I think it's important for us to work together to continue to address that. In that same time period, just in the last 12 months, we have declined a license application for 22 meat processing facilities in our state because we don't have the staffing necessary to provide the individuals needed for those entities to operate. That means that's 22 businesses that aren't operating, that aren't employing Georgians, that aren't paying taxes, that aren't providing access to farmers and producers to get their product to market. As an agency, we have a responsibility that we're providing that access for our farmers and producers every single day and protecting this food supply and everything that we do as an agency. And so we have a lot of work to do in our work together to ensure that we're providing that resourcefulness to our state. We continue to see an increase in violations. Matter of fact, over a 30% increase in violations in food safety. We have seen a 45% increase in violations in our companion animal division, and I want to thank our companion animal team and our law enforcement team that have worked together to address animal abuse in our state in significant ways. And I will point out one thing because it's a typo, but we did 15,000 inspections on 113,000 pumps last year in our fuel and measures division. So it takes us almost 2 years to inspect the gas pumps in this state because we have almost 200,000 in the state of Georgia. And as y'all know, as you travel this state, there are new gas stations going up every single day. That means more resources that we have to deploy to ensure that our agency is successful. So, working together, working with you, we can ensure that our number one industry is successful. We can ensure that agriculture continues to be top of mind. We can ensure that the businesses and entities that are regulated by us at the Department of Agriculture are able to do their job every single day in providing the food, fiber, and shelter we rely on. And I appreciate our work together in doing just that. And I look forward to our conversations over the next 90 days or so. 40 nights and 90, or 90 days and 40 nights, or 90 nights and 40 days, whatever it is, as we work together to do just that. So thank y'all for giving me an opportunity to give you a brief update and overview on the department, our funding, and our needs as an agency to continue to do the job that we've been asked to do every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Harper. 2 questions. Chair Lady Taylor. Oh, okay. Chairman Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner, thank you for the great work that you are doing, and your department and employees. There's certainly no lack of work to be done in our agriculture industry and the challenges that we have ahead. So thank you for what you are doing. 2 quick questions. One, on your employment retention within the Consumer Protection Division, what kind of turnover rate do you have within that division?
Mr. Chairman, I will tell you, I will get you an exact number because I would rather give you an exact number than tell you where we are. But I will say this, though. That said, we had about 120 or 30 vacancies when I walked in the door. We have lost a number of employees. We have gained employees. And in that time period, in the 3 years I've been commissioner, we've whittled that down to about 75 or 80. So we're making progress. We're making headway. We're going the right way because of your help in giving us significant pay raise and salary increases for our employees and helping us ensure that we're paying the people the boots on the ground. So we're heading in the right direction. But unfortunately, we're not getting there quick enough to keep up with the workload that our agency has. And any continued efforts to help us ensure that we're able to do that would be appreciative, but we can get you an exact number on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And lastly, with the lab down at the Atlanta Farmers Market, we hope that that's going to be a mass timber project built out of timber produced here in Georgia. And then lastly, with the reimbursement from the feds, understanding that pay raises is one thing, but with the other agreements that we have working with the feds, are reimbursements coming in a timely manner to the department?
Some of those reimbursements actually, to your point, Mr. Chairman, some of those reimbursements we've actually completely lost, as I mentioned just a second ago, in some in our food safety and our meat inspection program. Some of those have been delayed, but for the most part, we have been able to get, I believe, most of the funding that I have not spoken to directly in the presentation today. We've been able to receive that particular funding, but we get funding from a variety of sources: EPA, FDA, USDA. So there's a lot of different areas and agencies that we deal with as an agency in the federal funding that we receive. But other than the specific areas I pointed out, meat inspection and food safety, where we have lost funding or not been getting reimbursed as appropriately, the funding has been coming to our agency in a timely manner. Obviously, the shutdown affected us a little bit, but we were able to overcome that. But when it comes to those other areas, we have been getting the funding as required, but we still have some shortfalls in a number of other areas.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and look forward to working with you to address the many issues we have, including the shortfall that we have in being able to issue license for people to do business in the #1 state in the country. Thank you,
Amen.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all that you do for agriculture in Georgia. On page 393 of our budget book,
Okay.
there is a report that's the Georgia Economic Report, and it mentions a couple of times.
Representative, will you hold the mic to your mouth? There you go.
It talks about non-farm payrolls in Georgia, but there's no mention of farm payrolls anywhere that I can find in that Georgia Economic Report. What's the picture of farm payrolls in Georgia?
Representative Buckner, I would have to get that information back to you. Obviously, this Friday is the agricultural forecast, which the University of Georgia will be rolling out a lot of that economics. I will tell you, there are about 40,000 farms in the state of Georgia, average farm size of about 250 acres. Across our state, about 95% of our farms in Georgia are family-owned operations. I think that's something for us as a state to be proud of. But when it comes to specific payroll, and how much is of own farm payroll, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can work on getting that number to you. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Eccles. Last question. You didn't ask?
Somebody hit it, sorry.
Oh, it was you? Mike. It was you, Mike? Okay. Sorry. That got you.
I thanked you privately, but on behalf of the people of Walker County, thank you and your staff for what you did up there last week. It gave a lot of the producers and agricultural people their confidence that you addressed the situation, you handled it right, and I just want to tell you thank you publicly.
Representative Cameron, I appreciate that. Our team is still up there working ongoing. They'll be working through this cold weather. We're obviously watching the winter weather that's happening later this week. So keep our employees and others in your prayers and your thoughts, because they're out there braving that to address this issue. But thank you for your comments.
All right, last question. Thank you, Commissioner Harper. So we're going to come back. We're going to have lunch. Okay. We're going to come back at 1. Hold on. Go ahead, Chairman Tiller.
Senate members, please gather right here for a second after the chairman dismisses you.
We're going to come back 15 minutes after what the agenda says. So we're going to come back at 1:30. 1:30. So everything will be pushed
Senate
back
members,
15
please gather
minutes.
here for just 1 second.